I know you're a good podcast, but you know why I have to kill you.
I mean, there you go.
Yeah.
Not a lot of options.
No.
I mean, I know you guys are coming off a Buster Keaton series, but I think that notwithstanding, this is about as limited as it gets.
There's a saying. Is a boiled podcast afraid of boiling water?
Yeah.
It is a famous saying.
Sure.
Trying to see if there's a... Revenge was never this sweet was the U.S. tagline, which I think is not a good tagline.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think that's the vibe of the movie.
Slightly mischaracterizes what happens in the film.
It's not like he's like, this is sweet when it's happening, right?
Yeah. Licking his lips.
I waited, but it's worth the wait. It's definitely satisfying my emotions.
Revenge is a
What's
dish
happening
best
now?
served with disposable ice cream cake.
Revenge is never this sweet. That's the tagline for Sympathy for Mr. Vengeance in its
do think
limited
this
American release.
Quietly might be one of the best titles we've ever covered.
It's a very cool title. Now,
It's a
in
cool title.
Korean, it's just called Vengeance is Mine.
Oh, interesting. Right.
So it's a less exciting title.
Yeah.
And there
Not a
have
bad
been
title.
other notable films with that title.
Yes.
Yes.
And I would have loved to have been in the meeting that I assume was happening at the offices of like Tartan Asia Extreme.
Sure.
the
We're
Tartan
talking a
company
lot
offices.
of tartan.
There's been some Tartan talk.
yeah,
Yeah, it's
where
a pretty Scottish miniseries.
someone came in.
About it. Yeah.
Sorry,
We're wearing kilts.
Someone came in with a full ass kilt and was like, I can't. Oh my God, I almost lodged
You
into
actually
Extreme.
We're better than that, for
Yeah.
example.
My Scottish is very bad.
and
You thought you were done after you and
I know.
after Boyle.
I thought I'd never have to do a Ewan McGregor impression again.
the Scrooge McDuck of Tartan came in about to dive into his pile of Asian extreme money and was like, I've got it. And Park Chan-wook, he liked the title well enough.
No, it's
but what a weird choice.
It's a good ass title, but I do think it applies. Like, I'm a cyborg, but that's okay. I just think perfect title.
Should have been in parentheses. I would have put parentheses around the but that's okay.
There
Like
are a lot of look. They made a lot of choices. That title gives you a lot of options in terms of what are you capitalizing, what aren't you, what's the punctuation. But I watched this movie and I'm like, this is kind of describing the dynamic here. I do weirdly have sympathy for Mr. Vengeance.
I mean, I think what's most appropriate about it is the sort of like cockeyed sense of humor that it overlays to everything. I mean, that sardonic black humor is appropriate.
You do feel kind of bad for the people in this movie, even as they're all doing bad things.
Yes, I felt bad for them. I didn't think they were having a good time.
No, sympathy's the right word.
You do have sympathy for Mr. Vengeance, and Mr. Vengeance, yes, it's sort of like a title that gets passed to sort of... Well, not really. Well, one guy's mostly wearing the Mr. Vengeance hat, I guess. But there's a little bit of vengeance from the other guy.
People wear the hat.
There are portions of the movie where
There's a
I'd
bat.
say there are Mr.'s Vengeance, and they would have to share the sash.
Anyone can wear the hat.
And then,
Is
of
he
course,
doing-
someone
gonna-
asked
is he
Park
gonna
Chan-wook,
do-
is there a Mrs. Vengeance? Oh, sorry. What?
Is he going to
There
do
will be.
Enter the Vengeance verse ever? Anyone can wear the hat.
All the vengeful characters in art assemble.
His three.
The Count of Monte Cristo fucking like rides in at the end and into the lake.
Right. It's like his three protagonists, but then also Count of Monte Cristo. Count of Monte Cristo. I'm adding him to the list along with Monte Cristo. A con.
Well, what if we just? What about a Monte Cristo sandwich? Does that count?
Well, that's what I was saying. What the Count of Monte Cristo is.
It's just a sandwich.
Yeah.
Like if you did a Monte Cristo verse, you could have Guy Pearce and Jim Caviezel.
Yeah.
But you could also have like the sandwich.
It would all be public domain, including the sandwich, which is...
Is that one of those public? Yeah, that's
I think
The
it's all the
sandwich.
more reason.
The sandwich wants vengeance for being
Good
eaten.
start to this episode.
We've started it. I don't know what you're talking about.
This is
I
what Park Chan-wook
agree.
would have wanted
Are you
us
saying
to
good
be talking
start?
about.
It's a good start.
Okay.
What about in Inigo Montoya?
Yeah,
could
prepare
be-
to die.
He could be in the gang.
Ben, did you Google characters who need vengeance?
No, I wrote my name and you killed my father.
Right, because you didn't remember
his
his
name.
name. Right. But you remembered the line.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be good.
Vengeance verse could go very deep.
Yeah.
The Bride.
Sure. She's out for vengeance.
Yes.
Was there ever a comic book character like called? Oh, well,
There was the BJ Novak movie, Vengeance.
that one's actually out. I actually checked, and that one's not allowed.
BJ Novak is knocking at the door of
but
the Vengeance
no,
movie.
He might be
and
the
they're not letting him
supervillain.
in.
He might be the Thanos. I'm going to record 5 podcasts.
Pattinson Batman, he's going
Sure.
around calling himself Vengeance
Yeah.
for the whole movie.
I
Should've
am
called himself
Vengeance.
Mr. Vengeance.
Until that other guy's like, I'm Vengeance, and Batman's like, maybe Batman instead rings better. Yeah.
Wait, there must be a character.
I
a
checked and I couldn't
DC,
find one.
Marvel,
there has to be
90s 3-issue character.
I mean, do the Avengers count?
There's Ghost Rider is the spirit
let's
of
leave
vengeance.
them out. Oh, sure. I think you can put him in there.
What about Metal Gear
He's in.
Solid Revengeance or whatever the fuck
No,
that game's
I
called?
don't think so.
No, not
I
Raiden.
think we're actually
No, you're good.
hitting iron. Hitting some kind of,
The kids from Big Fat Liar.
Yeah. Yeah, they did it. So it's what, Bynes and Muniz?
Yeah,
Right.
both doing perfect.
Right? Yeah, they're both right now good.
Yeah, yes.
So the deal with Bynes is she's suffered in public greatly, and she's
Yes.
dealing with that. Muniz, I read some interview where he's like, I have no memory
Correct.
of like my life as a child
He's
star.
a race car driver now.
But
Mostly.
he's like a pregnant, like it's like post-pregnancy where your brain kind of just like papers over, and he's like, it's all gone.
Doesn't
basically
he,
like I had a series of strokes and I don't remember anything
Doesn't
about
he
filming
tweet
Malcolm in
about
the
like
Middle.
dreaming of murder?
Sounds like a perfect addition to the
Is he in the
Avengers.
fucking precog tank? It's like, he's going murder like that. That's him.
He might be the lead of our movie. It might be time for a comeback.
Muniz,
Getting revenge on the Hollywood that spurned
keep him
him.
on the bench.
You're gonna keep him. He's part of the Vengeance.
You're a real
Force.
gatekeeper to the Vengeance Society.
Yeah.
It's just anytime there's a sort of a small little white guy, I seem to want to give him Muniz, Novak.
Hey, wait a second. What about your podcasting partner?
You're allowed. Have you ever played a
The Mr. Vengeance
character
video
in a
game?
movie
Oh.
that sought vengeance?
Mhm.
I feel
Great
like
question.
No.
Horny Rob sought vengeance on his virginity. He had to get one over on his virginity. Of course, we speak of Horny Rob Becker.
Yes, who comes up a lot.
Yes, it's come up a lot recently. I don't think I have.
Well, Gavin in Search Party?
I wouldn't say it was vengeance. I'd say
No.
Arthur's looking for vengeance because his dad died. He's trying to solve the mystery of his
He's
father's
looking
death.
for closure.
Yeah, but he's also trying to
or-
get revenge on the
Yes, okay.
on the
all right.
terror.
Yeah.
Yes.
I have to confess
A little bit
that,
of that.
throwing Becker onto the Horny Rob moniker did not clarify for me what you're talking about.
Oh,
Maybe
he
we
was in a
gotta make
movie.
it part of the Beckerverse.
Oh, we could do a Beckerverse. Right. So get Danson back.
Yeah, Horny Rob.
And all those guys.
Uh,
But also all the other Becker guys,
Yeah, who else is in?
Alex Dessert. Is that his name?
You're saying the whole cast of
Yeah, Terry
Yeah.
Farrell.
Yeah.
Fucking,
Shawnee Smith.
Shawnee Smith.
Of course. Yeah.
Yeah. You ever watch Becker?
I'm just blown away by how many cast members of Becker both of you can name.
I think I can keep Jorge Garcia did a season.
Sure.
The guy who played, you remember the Curb Revenge coffee shop? Which another
Mocha Joe.
example of vengeance.
Right.
Yeah.
So Larry David's part of the Vengeance.
But Mocha Joe,
Mocha Joe was
he
on
was
it.
in Becker.
Yes.
What's
Yeah.
that guy's name?
Mocha Joe. Mocha Joseph.
Severio Guerra.
Sure.
That's his name.
Horny Rob Becker.
Oh, and Nancy Travis, obviously.
Yes. Horny Rob Becker, part of Beware the Gonzo, a motion picture in which I played the horny.
0 listeners for this
Best friend.
episode. I'm seeing.
How can you tell already?
I have a vision to the future.
I think
Wow.
Yeah.
You're a
weirdly-
precog in this way.
Yeah. 0.
it weirdly might have been our
The
star
worst
80.
precog ever. I can tell you, future podcast
you're in a
listenership.
different pool. It's at the murder. You're sitting at the Morton's in the
It's
murder
kind of
pool,
like
and you're
piss
like
yellow.
sad
It's
one to
really
the side
bad
pool.
You're in the
This
chartable
predicts,
pool.
podcast
Yeah.
ratings. We really can't find a better use for it.
I don't know. I mean, he's a mutant. He can't live in society. He has to live here.
We weirdly went on an extended Becker tangent in our Star 80 episode with Julie Klausner.
That was my
That's where we
main
did.
takeaway from the Star
and
80 episode.
yes, and then I was like, "Fuck, I should watch Becker." And Becker's on something. It's maybe on Tubi or something.
It has to be.
Right.
There's not a Pluto TV Becker
Or
channel.
Crackle. It's on something. It's on one of the less
Right.
shiny streaming services. But I started watching Becker because I was like, maybe
It's
I'm
on
gonna
Pluto.
Fucking there we go.
Becker's good. I know you're about to say something, but
Wait, is
I,
there-
I stick up for Becker.
Is there a Becker channel?
There's not.
No, just Becker on demand. BOD. Ad supported BOD. But I put on episode 1 of Becker. I know the whole thing is that
It's
he's
from
a grump
1998,
and a
and of course he's a
misanthrope.
grump.
But I was like texting Marie and Ben
9/11
and David.
hadn't even happened yet. What's he
9/11
upset
had,
about?
Becker's a firmly pre 9/11 show. But I was texting Ben, Marie, and David, and I was like, I'm doing it. I'm starting Becker. Cold open of Becker as Becker walks into the diner, and he's like, "What's up with these fucking gay people?"
Are you serious?
He doesn't
He's
say
grumpy
fucking,
about
obviously,
everyone.
but
He's
they're
an equal
basically
opportunity grump.
isn't a joke. He just comes in and he's like, "Gay people are uncomfortable, huh?" I know it was very harsh language.
I'm starting to understand why Becker has not been rebooted on Peacock.
I mean, look, I just think of Becker as just this interesting little way station between Danson's like biggest hits. But I watch Becker every week.
But also lasted like 6 seasons.
6 seasons.
This is the other thing I was texting you guys about was they kept on being like, the show is a failure, but we're going to try to give it another year to retool it a little bit. And that failure year, it was getting like 20 million viewers.
Oh, totally. Right.
And in its final season, they were like, this thing is just like bleeding out. We have to put it out of its misery. 17 million viewers.
So there was a time when you could just like turn to the person next to you on the subway and be like, hey, what do you feel about last night's Becker? And reasonably expect them to have an informed opinion.
Someone in your subway car has watched Becker.
Well, but Becker wasn't one of those shows where you're like, what a great Becker that week. It was more just sort of like Becker continued to be a grump.
Correct.
The young
he
Sheldon
was a community doctor in the Bronx who was always like, I'll tell you what your problem is. Stop eating burgers. And the guy would be like, all right, Becker.
Yeah. Now, can I share my thoughts on the homosexual community?
Then he would go to the diner.
Yes.
Where there was only Alex Dessert.
Sure.
Is that his name? Alex Dessert.
Yes. Who now plays Dr. Hibbert on Simpsons.
Oh, does he?
Yes.
Did the Hibbert actor die?
No, the Hibbert actor is Harry Shearer.
I saw that also Carl is now voiced by a black actor as well. They've finally...
Maybe he plays both.
He might. I could see that.
But yes, no, they've decided that...
Yes, he's also doing Carl.
Yes, white actors are only allowed to play yellow characters on The Simpsons now.
He's also playing Lou, the black police officer.
Okay, I think they added one at a time. They've been sort of piecemealing those characters.
I was reading Jesse David Fox's piece today about how The Simpsons is good again.
Yes.
And he mentioned that there's this episode where Carl goes to like the black neighborhood in Springfield, which we've never seen before. And it mentioned in a side, and Carl's also voiced by a black actor now. And I was like, right.
Sure. I think Apu is just benched.
Is Apu just not in it?
I think Apu's just not in it. He's the one that they just don't even use anymore.
Right.
And everyone else they've started easing back in. Yeah.
Does Apu need revenge?
Yeah, he hasn't appeared since season 29.
To the vengeance first.
Oh yeah, Apu's back.
Yeah.
Becker. Hattie Winston, that's the other actor I didn't mention.
Do you know what this is?
She was always telling Becker, what for.
Giving him what for, yeah.
Because she was the only one who could talk back to Becker.
Yeah.
Actually, everyone talks back to Becker.
Yeah.
He just lights a cigarette and says, like, God is dead.
Yes.
And CBS is like, up next. Fucking more of this shit.
Why can't we get 50 million people to watch this thing?
It was a hit.
This is what
Becker
I'm
was
saying.
the number 13 show on television.
And they were like, this
season.
is just, we're embarrassing
Becker.
ourselves. Becker.
I just bring back sitcoms where the opening credits are an out of focus shot of a New York City street and the theme song is just a saxophone going
or
like,
just someone going like,
but that means that more people watched a down season of Becker than watch the Oscars.
Then watch, like the NBA Finals now. Or
whatever. The lowest rated episode of Becker in live viewing did more than every episode of Succession combined.
Where Becker stubs his toe.
And
he's just complaining at the office.
Goddamn women with their periods or whatever.
Right. And meanwhile, Les Moonves is like pounding his fist on a desk and goes like, how do I explain this to people? The colossal failure of Becker. I go to my country club and people avert my gaze. Embarrassing. Anyway, this is a Blank Back, a podcast about Becker.
Exclusively.
Don't give Lights Camera Jackson any ideas.
No.
I'm going to start shopping iHeartRadio. I've got a show for you. David watches Becker.
Becker is definitely too harsh for Lights Camera Jackson. Becker is like Old Boy. It's like this is the most transgressive,
mainstream
abrasive.
4-camera.
Well, there was that episode where Becker unknowingly had sex with his daughter, which I think is a parallel.
Gouges his eyes out.
Yeah. Spoilers for next week's episode. This is Blank Check with Griffin and David. I'm Griffin.
I'm David.
So fast. But what's your last name?
Sims.
Come back to that in a second.
129 episodes of Becker.
Yeah.
The whole thing with it was Nancy Travis came in at the end of season 4.
Because they fired Shawnee Smith.
Becker?
No, they fired Terry Farrell, a.k.a. Dax from Deep Space Nine.
Yes.
And because they were like, your character's too mean, Becker's already mean, we're going to bring in Nancy Travis, and the deal is she's nice.
Right.
And that's like the new dynamic.
Yeah.
The minute they did that, the show tanked. Like season 5
match.
is the
I got to
ratings
say
in the
something to
toilet.
you that I've never said to another human being and hope to never have to. You know too much about Becker.
Well, you know what? That's actually been said to me before, and also about many other things that I know about.
This feels like a great moment to announce our first ever official Blank Check spinoff.
What's that?
Every episode of
I just said that I'm shopping that.
It's 2.5 years. You could do it.
Come on.
Wait, is the theme song to Becker just "It's Your Thing"?
Kind of.
His thing was being a
so,
grump.
He's so mean. You know this guy's mean.
He hates it all. I like the idea that once a year we do an extended Becker
It's the
tangent.
last Danson without gray hair.
Correct.
After Becker, he's on Damages with gray hair, and everyone was like, "Who's this fucking senator? Like, wait, like, how do I suck this guy's dick? This is the coolest guy on the planet."
The hair color was also
Became a total
unnatural in
sylph.
Becker.
He's dyeing his hair because he thinks people can't handle the gray hair.
He was always a partial tooth guy.
I mean, obviously, his Cheers hair is iconic in its own way.
But partial tooth.
Well,
he, of course,
I mean,
takes it off in a late season episode.
Yeah, no man could have that hair.
No, absolutely
without
not.
some help.
Absolutely
and I've got
not.
a decent head of hair.
Yes, no, absolutely not. But then, yes, on Becker, he's like dyeing it orange. That thing where people are trying to counteract the gray so much that they pick a color that doesn't exist in nature.
Yes,
Where he's like Hershey chocolate brown.
It's also right. The '90s hair dye was always a little, woo.
It's the two things basically. After that, he lets the hair go white.
Yep.
He puts on a pair of glasses.
Puts on those glasses.
That was his last pre-glasses performance. I think he has really bad eyesight and was always a contacts guy.
Damage was one of those shows where it was like Glenn Close, Rose Byrne, and then 7 withs.
Right.
Everyone else was some
And you're
special
like, John
guest.
Goodman, Martin Short, all these people are on this season. And Zelko Ivanek is the one who wins.
Oh, he was good.
Sure. Listen, this is a podcast
Doing
about
okay?
I mean, it's
filmographies.
another show that I have never even
You got a
thought
babysitter
about
to do
seeing.
this show.
I
Yeah.
did.
And we're
I
just
did. This show's
talking
costing
back.
me money
It's
right
costing
now.
you money.
Every second you talk about
We'll
Becker,
pay.
I'm getting
We'll
poor.
pay.
Yeah, but we probably pay below babysitter rates.
Yeah, you
Babysitters
really do.
ain't cheap.
Yeah. Look, it's a podcast about filmographies. Directors who have massive success early on in their careers, they're given a series of blank checks to make whatever crazy passion projects they want, and sometimes those checks clear, and sometimes they bounce. Baby.
Although you've never profiled a filmmaker who has failed and sunk lower before their check cleared than Park Chan-Wook, who, of course, I'm talking about becoming a film critic for the second time.
It's embarrassing.
Yeah.
It's embarrassing. There is, there's a good little canon of film critic to director. But you're right, this is the first one we've covered. We haven't done
But
Schrader,
he
we
also
haven't done
is one of the
Truffaut.
few who went from being a film critic
Bogdanovich?
to a director back to being a film critic.
That is the
because his
embarrassing
films
part.
bombed so hard.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
that is low. That is really, it's really hard to pick yourself off the mat after that kind
It's
of
like human
denigration.
worm
Yeah.
film critic.
Yeah.
And then JSA just sort of dropped into his lap, as I'm sure you guys have talked about by now. And he was like, "I'm back on top."
Look, I'm assuming
On
we've
top for
talked
the
about
first
it.
time.
That episode's the most touch and go episode in blank check history right now.
We've had a hard
but,
time with that one.
I've
But
had
look,
some good recommendations.
Look,
but-
if that episode hasn't come out yet, something's gone horribly right.
Yeah, that's true.
If we're starting to
That
release
would be the
these
first
out
time
of
we're
order,
just sort of like, this one will come eventually, guys. Sorry. No, it's not going to happen.
we had a really good guest booked.
Yeah.
And,
And he maybe
he's
can't do
unavailable
it.
for
Right.
very legitimate reasons,
Right.
and we're
it's-
scrambling
We're
a
sort
little
of
bit.
like,
right now. Yeah.
It'd be easier if
was-
it was fucking, a Becker episode. Then
Yeah.
people would be banging down the door.
They are. We're getting unsolicited letters being like, "Can I please do
Becker.
God, there was like a half second.
208?"
Ransom.
Is that why people were protesting out front? Had signs that
Absolutely.
said
Oh, yeah.
"Do
Yeah.
Becker,
Right,
Do
Becker.
Becker."
Everyone
Yeah.
wearing brown toupees.
I'm just mourning that the half second window I had to make a great Kim Jong-un joke is him being the guest of your JSA episode. It closed very quickly. We're long past it, but I just
Oh,
wanted to mark the
it's-
But
occasion.
you're
It's
still
not a-
just
It's
jamming
not a
Yeah, oh, yeah.
joke.
Oh, yeah.
We had him booked, and he bailed.
Oh yeah, you're trying to bring it back around. I appreciate that.
I mean,
Yeah.
Becker is now in the intellectual dark web. That's the only problem. So he is mixing with a bad crowd.
Yes.
Yeah.
Becker would be like the guy who cries all the time, Jordan Peterson.
Oh, that guy. Right. No, he's not that bad. Come on. Could Jordan Peterson have this as a theme song? Yeah. The Bronx. He's a doctor, but he's not happy. He's always walking around.
But surely he must be nice to his patients, David.
No.
I just picture Park
Is he
Chan-Wook.
nice to the one guy who serves him food? No.
Park Chan-Wook is going to listen to this episode one day because someone's going to be like, "This show, blank check, very
They
popular."
paid you this
Did
great
a-
honor. Their fans
Yeah.
voted for you.
He's going to pop on the Sympathy for Mr. Vengeance episode because that's where he really feels his career began.
Yeah.
And he's going to be
Yeah.
like, "What the fuck is this?
This is
I
a-
love Becker."
This is a problem sometimes is people dip into one episode never having heard our show before. And it's like why are they being this disrespectful to this filmmaker talking about bullshit for 20 minutes? And we're like, we're equal opportunity.
Yeah,
tangents.
we'll do that with everybody.
Right.
Of course.
Right.
Much like Becker was an equal opportunity offense.
He was an asshole to everybody.
Yeah.
This
Okay,
is a
look.
miniseries on the films of Park Chan-Wook.
Jesus, we haven't even said that.
It's called I'm a Podcast, but that's okay.
That's what it's called.
And we're rolling with the Western pronunciation because it would cause an international incident if we tried
I
to
think
say
we would sound
Park
stupid and
Chan-wook for
offensive trying to do
3
that
hours.
all
Park
the time.
Chan-Wook,
Yes.
right?
and
Is Park Chan-Wook?
I mean,
It's a great
certainly
example
not
of why
gonna
we're
correct
not
you.
doing
Exactly.
this.
That's why we're
Yes.
not doing it. Yeah.
And we are here to talk about
Now,
his
well,
fourth film.
This is the thing. Our public voted for Sympathy for Mr. Podcast.
They did, but
and
they
we
didn't
said,
get
fuck you. But that is the movie we're talking about today. And our guest today is a different David, which is why I made you say your last name.
Of course.
it is.
From IndieWire, from the Village episode,
He's still there. In
from the
Village
Indiana
episode.
Jones and the Crystal Skull episode. You must really be feeling vindicated right about now.
You know, I was going to save this for the end of the show
Eyes
Wait,
wide
we
shut.
vindicated about what?
about talking about how Kingdom of the Crystal Skull is a very, very interesting movie.
Oh, sure.
Yes, I did.
The
After,
fact that the consensus on Dial of Destiny has basically been like, maybe they should have stopped at 4.
at the time we're recording this, I saw the
haven't
film in
seen it.
Cannes.
I haven't seen it yet
By
either.
the time this episode comes out, there will be a
It'll be
wider
out.
reaction to it.
No,
I
it'll
do
be out.
think
It'll be out.
we've got a reverse Crystal Skull happening here because Crystal Skull premiered to like relatively warm reviews
Sure.
out of Cannes, and then when the fans got a hold of it, it was absolutely
It
desecrated.
may actually play better.
Yes.
Dial of Destiny will play better to people who want the fucking Force Awakens treatment given to every
That was your
franchise
review,
movie.
basically. It was just like, it is competently made, and I dislike that this is what we're doing with movies
But
now, right? Yeah.
Before we move off the topic,
Please.
something I was going to say at the very end of this episode, using this opportunity, because I did just have this rather eye-opening experience at Cannes.
Okay.
I was at the world premiere, humble brag,
Humble brag.
of this fucking awful movie that I then had to stay up all night writing about.
You were turning the dial.
I was. I wish I could have turned that dial, let me tell you. And before the movie began, they showed a very, some would say, over-long career tribute to
Right.
Harrison Ford.
Right. This
and
8-minute standing ovation.
He
that
was
everyone's talked
moved.
about.
He was
And
crying
then
and he gave a speech.
A very, very moved.
No, it was entirely just Morning Glory,
That's
right?
right.
Just
It
the
was the
scene where he
first-
does the eggs.
The
Yeah.
first 30 minutes of Morning
No,
Glory.
no, no.
is
It was the
cut to black.
omelet, and he
Yeah,
says
no, that's the
fluffy.
end.
Yeah, it's the end. Yeah.
And
I'll
yeah, a
make
very
my
moved Harrison
frittata.
Ford
Frittata, that's what it is, right?
comes to the stage and gives, a characteristically brief and terse speech, but
Right. Yeah.
all the more powerful because you could tell how raw the emotion was. And he said something that I found, very obvious but affecting, but he was like, this, you have been such a big part of my life, nodding to Callista Flockhart in the audience, talking about the richness of his existence beyond just being an actor.
A
But,
really
that this is
enduring relation. How long
yeah.
have they been together?
25
a
years?
hot minute. But it was very humanizing. He was very much like, this is just something I do. It's something I love, and I love the response that I get.
Sure.
But and I, as someone who listeners to this podcast may remember, is famously sort of not. I don't feel a deep personal connection
You're not
to
a
Harrison
huge
Ford.
Ford
I believe your
I-
quote was.
well, we're
when-
gonna get there.
Okay,
so
I'm sorry, one jump ahead.
I was very moved by this, and
Yeah.
that feeling evaporated. Over the first half an hour of the film that followed. But so something that has haunted me on and off for 8 years now, whenever I was first on this podcast, was
I think it was your first episode.
we recorded
right?
The Village.
Yeah.
And
Because Star Wars was coming up, I think.
Yeah.
And
Or no, it had just happened.
I think the episode I did
Well,
after
my
that was
question
Indiana
just
Jones.
was it that, or was it on the Crystal Skull episode?
No, I think it was The Village.
Oh,
Because
'cause,
the reason I know is because what had happened, and we
Yes.
don't have to get too heavy about it, was that it was about 6 weeks after my dad died, and all these celebrities were dying. And it was like David Bowie had just died,
Sure.
and someone else died in the same span.
I think Abbas Kiarostami died that day. I think that's
no,
what
he
spurred
died.
the conversation.
Kiarostami died in the summer because I was at the film festival when it
Some
happened.
filmmaker died that day, and you
Sure.
were talking about how impactful that was on you, and saying, and I'm not someone who usually gives a fuck when
Sure.
celebrities
And
die.
I made sort of an
Kiarostami died
off-
on July 4th.
Yeah.
Land of the free.
And I made a sort of offhanded comment about how I wouldn't be sad when Harrison Ford died. It was partially me just fishing for an
You
example.
were being a stinker.
You basically
was.
said, I will feel nothing when he dies.
Yes.
But my
and I
real-
challenged you right away, I believe.
Where
You're
I
being
was
a bit of
coming
a
from-
Becker, to be honest.
I was being a Becker. He's been my
I've got a
dividing
perfect
rod for
song
a
for
long
this.
time.
Ehrlich and Harrison Ford, kind of two competing Beckers, two people putting up steely fronts.
Oh, this is the perfect music for me talking about my dead dad. Keep going.
Keep going.
Sorry,
but
go
the
on,
feeling,
go on,
no,
go on.
I mean, this is what Becker would be hearing when he was
Sure.
talking about his grief. But I was coming from this space where I was kind of defensive, and all of these public and performative protestations were happening around these.
Are you
dead people.
apologizing for a blank check
I
Have we
I am,
gotten big enough
goddammit.
that we have to do this now?
No, because what's going to happen is Harrison Ford will die one day.
I mean, he
and
will.
immediately,
Maybe he's
one
the
of those
first
fucking
to not
weirdos,
do it.
you know, God
Right.
love him, who listens to the show, is going to come for me with the knives out.
Sure.
And
You have to get ahead
You
of
will
this.
feel bad.
I will feel bad because not only will I feel bad just because, you know, it was an offhanded and irreverent mark to say when I was really just trying to process the fact that, you know, the collective mourning felt very divorced from where I was emotionally at the time.
Right.
But I had now developed something of a newfound appreciation for Harrison Ford of all people.
Well, he's also had a whole thing in his 70s. Like he's been kind of, you know, he took 10, 15 years off as an A-list guy.
He did.
And then this whole like revival, obviously mostly centered around all his like legacy projects or whatever, but like it's just a lot of Harrison Ford. Just more of him.
Yeah.
And
And
he,
also,
he
like,
do be hot.
Oh my God. You guys will all know this by the time this episode comes out, but he has a shirtless scene in The Dial of Destiny. He's 80 years old. He looks better than I ever will
He's fixing
or
Rick
ever
Dalton's
have.
roof and he like takes his shirt off.
It
It's
is.
a Brad Pitt.
It was deeply hurtful to see how
good-looking guy.
fucking hot he still is.
He once heard the call of the wild.
He
We
did.
can't forget that.
He picked up the phone.
Anyway.
Ring, ring. Hello, the wild.
Regrettably, I think one of the big flaws of Sympathy for Mr. Vengeance, no Harrison Ford.
No Harrison Ford.
Where would he fit in? I don't really see a Harrison Ford part.
What's his Vengeance movie? He must have made a Vengeance movie.
I'm coming to get you.
I mean,
can't
Air
do
Force
Harrison
One becomes a Vengeance movie.
Yeah.
of course,
Get
it's
off
running
my
time.
plane.
The Fugitive.
Well, yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah. But that's more him trying to clear his name than get revenge. Although I guess he wants to find the one-armed man.
Although-
He is, fugitive, but he's not. It's not really. He's clearing his name in the
Right,
fugitive. I
right.
didn't kill my wife.
Right.
Presumed innocent. You know, he's vengeant against the idea. Vengeant. That's not a word.
Sure.
Against the idea of his guilt.
Right. I guess there's that thing of him just trying.
He played some aggrieved guys.
Yeah.
Random
Generally
hearts.
seems like a pretty aggrieved guy.
Yeah.
But
K-19, the Widowmaker, hated that sub.
You saying that he was crying during the tribute and the
Right, and
standing
I called him a
ovation
big
and everything.
baby, right?
I was trying to
I
remember,
booed from the stands.
I was trying to remember what movie it is. I think it's Oz the Great and Powerful, where when Mila Kunis cries, it burns her cheeks.
Yes, that's right. That's what gives her these
right.
these
I
scars.
imagine Harrison Ford cries so infrequently that when it happens, it creates new lines in his face.
His skin is like, what is this moisture? Are you swimming?
It was just a
No,
very
he's a nice
clear
man.
indication of
He's a nice
how
man.
much he gives a shit, which is something that
Yes.
can, under his sort of gruff demeanor,
Anyway,
can
I
be
think I've
lost.
said this before, but his Inside the Actor Studio is amazing. And James Lipton kind of prods him on, like, you care a lot more than people think you do, right? And he just kind of, like, grits his teeth and nods.
Katakai as God made her.
Yeah.
Sorry, James Lipton.
Anyway, and here's a great new photo that I assume you guys have all seen.
Nude?
No, new.
Oh,
yes.
him on the set of
Marvel dropped a picture
Captain
today
America.
of
New
him and Anthony
World
Mackie
Order.
having an exchange of ideas.
Now, before we get...
It's not called New World Order anymore.
What's
it's
it called?
Brave New World.
Is it really? Did
Never
that
been the
just get
title of
announced?
anything before.
I bet you they were like, New World Order's a little too QAnon-y. We need to
Yeah.
change it. Yeah. I bet you that's what happened.
I think so.
David, is he eating something in the picture? Is that a fork in his hand?
No.
What? Why? What are you saying?
I don't know. I just was wondering
No.
if he was
No.
chomping down on something.
He and Mackie are just like
Yeah.
shooting the shit. And Mackie's just got a Captain America shield on
Eating the
his back.
scenery. That's all they're doing.
And he will do it.
They're fucking chewing up their lines. Ehrlich, we should start talking about the subject at hand about Park Chan-Wook and Sympathy for Mr. Vengeance. But I do, just while we're on the subject of Harrison Ford, before we close this book, I do want to say, I don't know if you've noticed yet, but since the last time you've been here, since the last time I'd imagine you've seen him, Ben now has something in common with late stage Harrison Ford.
Abs?
Yeah, right. No.
What if you got yoked, Ben?
I've been thinking about it.
Ben and I
Swole
talk about
haws.
it once every 6 months. We go like, what if we did that?
A small plane?
I'm gonna, the older you get, the harder that is to do.
Yeah.
So maybe
Well,
shorten that time.
the way
Tell
I've-
that to Stuart Wellington.
the plan
He's
I've
the fucking
devised
hottest man
is-
alive.
is.
The only way that could happen
Yeah.
is I'd need to be walking down the street.
Right.
a van pulls up, throws a sheet over my head, pulls me into the van, holds me captive in a basement for 3 days.
Ben is now putting,
This could be a Park Chan-Wook
counting
movie.
this on his fingers.
And then once I've lost all hope from escaping, they then forced me to exercise for the next 2 to 3 months.
I'm saying they need to break your spirit before you begin exercise.
I agree.
I can't start. I need to be just like totally broken down.
Yeah.
And then I'll get yoked.
Yeah, I don't do CrossFit. I do Abu Ghraib. Ehrlich. There is something, Ben Hosley, moving on from that joke as quickly as I possibly can. There is something Mr. Hosley has in common with Mr. Ford.
Yeah, he's got an earring.
Oh, an earring.
He got the Harrison Ford.
This room is not well lit. It's actually kind of hard to see from a distance.
glance.
It is very hard to see from here, but the issue is that you would need. So now this is another change that's happened in the 6 months since I've been here. Now there are illustrations of all of the hosts' faces on their desks.
Yeah,
and they're rather large and distracting. And Ben's needs
and
an
the
earring.
mouths move with our mouths.
Oh, you're right.
In order
you
to
gotta
reflect
get a
reality.
pen. What if we send
No, we just got a thumbtack and
Joe
hammer it
Bowen
in.
made these for us, the great Joe Bowen, who
I mean,
also
they
got
look
into
great.
woodworking and made them. We have them hanging in a hook so you know whose desk it is. But yes, Ben's does need an earring now.
But
Looking
yeah,
good.
weeks before turning 38 years old, I got my ears pierced for the first time.
Hell yeah.
And Ben is calling it? No, what are you calling this era?
Oh, it's my bad boy era 2.0. I'm coming back around to being a bad boy.
Sympathy for Mr. Vengeance.
Yes.
2003 film from 2002. Sorry, film from Park Chan-Wook.
It is released in
His
the United
follow-up,
States
2005. Barely
after
released.
Bad
Barely
Boys?
I'm
released.
still just thinking about what the other incarnations of Ben's
No,
Bad Boy
no,
2.0
no.
face
We're not doing tangents anymore.
Ding dong.
Hello. Oh, the door. Click and creak. And who's at the door?
Hey, man.
What's up, bro?
It's me, Steven Summers.
Steven Summers, the director of The Mummy.
No, dude, that's my father.
Hey, man, well, you can't smoke in here.
I can, because I'm the king of summer. Steven Summers, the director's my father. I'm Steven Summers Jr. I have a little bit of a different career path than my father.
And what is that?
My father directs
This is
mummy movies,
the weirdest
G.I. Joe
take.
movies.
Yeah, they did that Jungle Book.
Yeah, he's got some range as a director.
Deep Rising.
I only like doing one thing. Celebrating the summer.
Okay.
Good
so
thing I got this name.
He's spilling pina colada all over the
he's
floor.
literally just the first line in the copy says, "Now that it's summer."
It's
This
summer.
is what he's going off
It's
of.
my season.
And so he
couldn't
decided
do
to
an
do
ad read in the
Steven
winter.
Summers' son.
Steven Summers Jr., the king of summer.
Now, we have no evidence that that is actually the name of Steven Summers' children.
It is.
child.
Believe me, I'm the one telling you.
Okay, well, now that it's summer, Steven,
Yeah.
you might be looking for wholesome, convenient meals for sunny, active days.
How did you know? That's like a cornerstone of my personality.
I didn't know that at all. Factor,
Okay.
America's #1 ready-to-eat meal kit,
Yeah.
can help you fuel up fast with flavorful and nutritious ready-to-eat meals delivered straight to your door. You're going to save time, eat well, and reach all your summer goals.
Yeah, but David, I'm too busy with summer plans to cook.
Well, you're going to skip the grocery store.
What?
Skip the chopping and prepping and cleaning up too.
I usually don't skip, I surf.
Okay. You're going to get the flavor and nutritional quality you need.
Okay.
They got fresh meals, never frozen.
Good, I hate frozen things because I like summer.
Right. Too cold. What about like a slushie though? It kind of hits in the
Brand's
summer.
strong.
Okay, fine.
I melt my slushies.
Weird.
So they're hot, molten hot, like summer.
So that's a hot pina colada?
Yeah. Ugh. Burning my flesh. Look at my arm.
Jesus. What's going on with you? You're one of the worst people I ever come in here.
Well, I'm like a trust fund kid. Remember,
Yeah,
my
right,
dad
yeah,
made a bunch
sure,
of big movies.
Sure. Okay, look.
I spent it all on molten hot pina coladas.
It's never frozen, so all you have to do is heat and enjoy. Then
Get
you go,
over this part quickly.
Then you go back outside and soak up the
Oh,
warm
you
weather.
said never frozen. Good.
Never frozen. No, you heat it
Okay.
up. It's just what you want
Thank
to do.
God. Okay, go on.
You have dietitian approved calorie smart meals.
Of
if you want
course.
to be calorie conscious.
Yeah, I don't like dumb calories.
If you want protein plus meal, maybe.
Yeah,
they
trying
got
to
some of
bulk
those. 30 grams of protein or more per serving. They got some upscale stuff, surf and turf.
What?
And also Surf and Surf.
4 of my favorite things.
Surf, turf, surf, and surf?
Correct.
Okay. And then also, of course, they have keto meals or vegan veggie, things like that. It's all prepared by chefs and improved by dietitians and has the ingredients you need to feel satisfied all day long while meeting your goals.
It being summer is my main goal.
Okay, listen up. You can rest assured you're making a sustainable choice. They offset 100% of their delivery emissions to your door, source 100% renewable electricity for their production sites and offices, and feature sustainably sourced seafood in their meals.
I'm on a seafood diet.
Okay, so this June, get Factor and enjoy eating well without the hassle. Simply choose your meals and enjoy fresh, flavor-packed meals delivered to your door, ready in just 2 minutes. No prep, no mess. Head to factormeals.com/check50 and use code check50 to get 50% off your first box. That's code check50 at factormeals.com/check50 to get 50% off your first box. I kind of stopped talking to you because I feel like there's just too much to get into with you, and I'm going to get distracted.
Yeah, still waters run deep, but I'm telling you, there are a lot of interesting parts of my personality.
All right, time to
would
go.
Shock you. Bye.
Griff, it got a minuscule release in the U.S. in 2005, and yes, I do think
after
it was
Oldboy, right?
Around. Yes, it was after Oldboy. It was in the summer. Oldboy was in like the spring.
Yeah,
and it was clearly just to kind of like, you like that guy?
Because I remember being like,
this is fucked up.
I remember.
Peter Griffin was running Tartan Extreme at the time.
I mean, it makes as much sense as anyone else.
You think that's bad? Remember the time I kidnapped my old boss's daughter? I'm losing that accent fast. No, I remember it coming out very shortly after and being like, already this guy's fucking churning them out?
It's an old one.
But of course, Oldboy had been, it took 3 years to get released in the States?
2 years to get released in the States. This took 3 years.
This took 3, right.
And
released
then,
out
I think,
of
and then Lady Vengeance,
Yeah.
Of course, the follow-up to Oldboy, which came out in Korea in 2005.
Is actually shot around this time when these movies are coming out.
That premiered at
Right.
the U.S. at the New York Film Festival in 2005. So it was a Park Chan-Wook
That's
year.
the thing, right? All 3. I always forget that Oldboy's the middle one because the release in the States was so bizarre.
Well, so because you big dum-dum.
I'm a big dum-dum. That's fat.
Yeah.
That's fat. That is fat.
That's
I'm a
fat.
big dum-dum.
David, what is your relationship to Mr. Director Park and his films, especially the Vengeance trilogy, this one of which you selected as your film?
I sure did. This could be. We might have to have a little story time corner here.
Do it.
This is going to be a story. I promise it's a long walk worth taking because there is no other filmmaker about which I have this kind of story that I can tell. But I mean, the Sympathy for Mr. Vengeance, where I came to it part, it starts with our nation's finest film critic pre-Ben Hosley, and of course, I'm talking about Harold Knowles. And you know, I am someone who has sort of a rule. I do not like to speak ill of other film critics in public. Love to do it privately, but in public, I just feel like, one, I've been on the other end of that way too often. 2, we all work in a marginal field. No, universally beloved. We're all working in a marginal field. None of us are fucking.
We get it. We get it. What do you want
Andrew
to say about
Sarris.
Harry Knowles?
Anyway, don't like him.
Yeah.
Big old
not a great critic. But the one, and truly maybe the only one good thing that he ever sort of meaningfully contributed to my life was an article he wrote that I think brought a lot of, white teenagers in around 2002 to the table, which was his top 10 list of the year.
Yes.
The number 1 pick on that was Sympathy for Mr. Vengeance, a movie that he was very well aware none of his readers had heard of. And his entire blurb is all about how you haven't heard about this movie because you are not as dedicated a cinephile as he is.
Great.
Men should feel like shit.
Yeah.
And he discovered it. And it's like this really gross blurb about how he like turned to his father halfway through the movie and was like, this could be number 3 on my list of the 10 best films of the year. And then would like update him over the course of the running time. Just truly absurd behavior.
What did
Anyway,
Father Geek say in response to that?
Father Geek's side of the story is not well represented in the blurb, I have to say. But at the time,
you took it seriously enough.
I took it seriously enough that I was like, I will go on YesAsia.com and I will import this region.
Wow.
You said yes to Asia.
DVD. And it was illuminating for me. It was quite a visceral experience.
So you saw this before
I did.
Oldboy.
So I was...
you had not, I assume, seen Joint Security Area.
I saw Joint Security Area about 6 weeks after, which is how long it took that DVD to come from YesAsia.com.
And these were, you said region-free discs. You didn't have a region. Did you have a region-free player?
Oh, I sure did. I got one for about $49 at like a local junkyard.
Wow.
And
Junkyard. Was Creech there?
Did Watto sell it to you?
Hey.
Two different jokes. Same vibe.
And then, so when...
play Eureka Entertainment discs. They have better commentary.
Watto famously worked at Kim's Uptown for a few years in the early aughts.
But he only accepted hyperdrive parts.
He also had a lot of
annoying.
opinions on porn.
Too many.
So when Old Boy was programmed to competition at Cannes, I was all over that. And when it won an award, I was very excited. But my real interesting story with Park Chan-Wook, and I'll go through this as part of close and as fast as I can.
Go.
Slow it down.
Maybe a story you've heard before.
Pour some molasses on it.
It all starts in Newton, Massachusetts in 1939, where my dad was born. Big dad heavy episode.
Yeah.
No,
I know this story.
Yeah, my dad grew up very poor, was not, and it always burned, was the son of immigrants, and it burned up his, it burned his grits, whatever you want to say, that he could never afford to travel. And when he had kids, he was hell-bent on allowing us to travel in the way that he was never able to. And when each of his kids were college age, he took all of them on a trip. And I decided, based purely on the strength of Sympathy for Mr. Vengeance, and imagine how fucked up this is, that you watch Sympathy for Mr. Vengeance and your takeaway is, I want to go there. That I was like, Seoul is where I want to go. That's the place for me.
Bay. You'll be there.
It was like at the end of Universal movies where it says, like, come visit the movies, Universal Studios Hollywood.
It was like, come visit the abandoned, unfinished building where, his kidney was taken out of his body. And so I said, I want to go to South Korea. And my dad said, okay. And I had this was in 2005.
What if you said you wanted to go to North Korea? He may have drawn the line.
Well, we went to North Korea.
As part of the same trip?
Yeah. We'll get to that part of the story, but there's an asterisk there. But
I hope there's an obelix as well where that came from.
Asterisk and obelix, Mission Korea? Uh-oh.
But I had a cousin of mine.
I'm seeing here France has issued an apology.
Sacre bleu.
A cousin of mine who did not in any way, shape, or form work in the film industry and is kind of estranged, said to me when I told him about this trip that I know a guy. And I was like, okay. And that was the last I heard of it. So we go to Korea and we visit the DMZ, the site of the JSA. We stepped across the foot of the border into North Korea.
Oh, so you were like Mike Pence when you went to the border and you looked all grumpy.
I mean, literally,
America.
It's like the Disneyland quadrant of North Korea, just so you can have the purposes of saying I've been to North Korea when somebody asks you on a podcast facetiously, like 15 years later.
Move along.
And
pour a little more molasses
we got home from the DMZ, and at our hotel was a note that said Park Chan-Wook will meet you at your hotel at 10 a.m. tomorrow morning. And I was
Do you know this story, Sam?
I do.
Okay. And I was like, what? I was very confusing because I was and still am not anyone of any significance, and it's certainly true of my father and my cousin, and it was all very confusing.
Dozens of people hate you online. You're very significant.
But back then, no one even hated me. I was a complete unknown.
They were just getting ready.
They were warming up. And
don't you just think fondly about a time where the only people who hated you actually knew you?
Right, were your actual friends.
Before we had to fucking live online.
I like to think
a whole world of hatred.
Yeah. You hated me because of my actual behavior affecting you on a day-to-day basis.
I like to think, delusionally or not, that the only people who hate me are those who don't know me, but that may not be true. So at 10 a.m. the next morning, a limo rolls up to our hotel, and we get in. Park Chan-Wook is not there, but his music producer and supervisor and frequent musician Jo Young-wook is there. And a translator and another producer. And we get into limo, and it is incredibly confusing for everybody because I am like, why is any of this happening? And they are like, there's just like this 19-year-old white kid here with his 70-year-old father. Like, what is happening? And we made small talk. They took us up about a 40-minute car ride to the highest restaurant rather in Seoul. This unbelievably extravagant place at the top of a mountain, glass, floor-to-ceiling windows, 7-course meal. I mean, it was so over the top. I cannot remember what we talked about. All I know is that my social anxiety was going absolutely through the roof as my dad was it was very, very strange scenario. And I still couldn't figure out what was happening.
Translator.
Oh,
right?
totally.
Which is also its own experience.
Who was completely incapable of explaining to me what any of us were doing there.
Yeah.
Someone had said, some kid is here, and there I was in this car with these people.
Sure.
So wild. Then after this delicious meal, they took us to Park Chan-Wook's office. And
Did you guys pick up the check?
Yeah, we did. It was like 13. No, we absolutely did not. I mean, it would have been as expensive as the rest of our trip combined. And they brought us to Park Chan-wook's office, where he was essentially doing a victory lap right after Lady Vengeance had come out.
Okay, so he's completed the trilogy.
He had, but it was in the period of time between when Lady Vengeance came out in Korea and when I was dying to see it at the New York Film Festival. And he brought me into his office and he sat down and he came in and I was like, hi. He was like, hi, I'm Park Chan-wook. And I was like, hi, I'm David. And like that was basically all I had. And we talked for an hour, mostly about Robert Aldrich.
Wow.
Because he was really high. He had just seen a Lee Marvin, Robert Aldrich Western and was like super high on it. And we were talking about like Quentin Tarantino, and he's really dubious about the idea of his movies being remade, even by Tarantino, it had been rumored to be. And I never really got a clear answer as to what we were doing there or how we had gotten through the door. I think the best explanation I have is that the idea that his movies were sort of permeating beyond Korea's borders in a meaningful way.
In and of itself was exciting enough to him.
That like young film nerds were that excited about meeting him. I think was enough to sort of open the door and just like pick my brain about how I was watching his movies and how they were being received. But he wasn't like, it wasn't interrogative. He really just wanted to talk about movies, and he was delightful. And I spent time with his like wife and daughter who were there, and then I became friendly with Jo Young-wook, and then I went on my way. And I interviewed him as a film critic for Stoker a few years later, and made sure not to mention this because it would have been mortifying.
Okay. And he didn't remember?
Oh, of course not. No.
Yeah.
And but that was my first interview that I'd done with a filmmaker, and I remember him saying that I was a terrible interviewer, but I was a good film critic because I just kept telling him what I thought of his movies rather than asking questions because I'd never done it. And that was my Park Chan-wook story. It was delightful. Anyway, that was the longest monologue I think anyone has probably ever given on this podcast.
Great.
I had to get out.
We've had some
my RoboCop episode is basically one unbroken monologue.
Should I just keep doing
called
this?
it my RoboCop episode.
It is your RoboCop episode.
But there are photos of my dad arm in arm with Park Chan-wook.
That's wild.
Very surreal. I am like trying to
you're
dissolve
into a paper
model.
bag.
Yes. I've never been so mortified in my life. As someone who like hates putting people out, and my dad loves putting people out, I was just there being like, don't you have better things to do? Like, shouldn't be working on like the subtitles for this movie I'm dying to see?
Vengeance.
To your question, Ehrlich, right? I mean, you saying like he maybe was just kind of so excited that his movies are crossing over into different countries. The idea
like, at least
that he had a fan
Harry
this young.
Knowles.
He was like, finally, some white guy who isn't
really
Harry
low.
Knowles is seeing my movies.
But I also, when I was young, I mean, around the same ages, I feel like I had experiences like that of like people I idolized who I either found on Friendster and sent messages to or went up to after like readings or screenings or whatever.
Friendster.
Who would actually, I'm pulling out the Friendster. Who would actually like give me the fucking time of day and like talk to me about this shit. And I was always like, why the fuck are they doing this? Right? Like, why? And with distance and a little bit of maturity, I truly think it is, if you're at that stage in your career, you are so fucking tired of the industry at large and the amount of conversations you're having by people who are like trying to get something out of you or are really like gaming themselves around you, that I do think there's some point where it's like, I just want to talk to like some 15-year-old who just has a very earnest excitement about this.
And he fucking loves movies.
Yeah.
And he will famously race to finish production days so he can go catch repertory screenings of,
cool.
Whatever's playing, in local theaters. And that weighs on him more heavily than getting the shot right, like in certain times. So he really just loves talking about it. I think he was curious about how those Hollywood filmmakers from the 70s and 60s are faring in like contemporary estimation. He just wanted to talk about that stuff, and it was a little break for him. It's like, when Hideo Kojima has every single person you've ever heard of come into his office for a selfie these days. It's sort of the equivalent of that.
We need to start doing that. We need to like find our own version of the Criterion Closet that's a reason for people to visit here and take a picture.
Yeah, come through.
Just get a photo booth?
I feel like we can do better than that. Maybe we get our arcade cabinet and you play
David really wants
X-Men
to get an
with
arcade
us
cabinet.
or whatever.
Yeah, and you take a picture.
Really.
It'd be like the draft house that just has NBA Jam.
Well, NBA Jam would be fun.
Huh?
heating up. Yeah, sure. Right. No, I do, and I do. I mean, I do.
We've
but
had 10 conversations about
well,
this.
excuse me, you're often the instigator.
I'm not the instigator. I'm giving you information.
Who's the Becker? Who's the Terry Farrell? That's the question.
I think I'm
In every friendship, there is a Becker and a Terry Farrell, as if I know what that means.
Terry
Anyway.
Farrell, she was Dax.
Sure. Shepard?
Yes. The original armchair expert.
Yes. Dax Shepard. No, she's Dax from Deep Space Nine.
Of course.
Remember
My
Dax?
long-winded way of saying I ride or die for Park Chan-wook. We go way back.
This
You
is
really
a,
do.
a very
No,
pivotal moment for you.
Because I
this
feel
movie.
like for most Western viewers, Old Boy was probably the entry point,
And then
but
you-
not for thee.
Right. Drive back around to Mr. Vengeance.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a... Sorry, I keep making that joke.
Yeah. Excuse, Mr.
You know what there
Vengeance was
is,
my
and
father. That's
she's-
the other joke to make.
I
Yeah.
think he should do Uncle Vengeance, though.
He
Go
should.
back. Go back to the well.
Uncle Vengeance.
Baby Vengeance.
Baby Vengeance is fun.
Baby Vengeance is fun.
Oh, and I'm seeing here that Park Chan-wook's pitch for Baby Vengeance would not be fun, actually, at all. It's
Just that
very
scene,
disturbing.
It's that scene from Under the Skin for 2 hours.
It is wild how different these two movies are. I mean, I know the whole thing is that these first two, right? I know the whole thing is that they were not designed to be like companion pieces.
Not
And then at the
particularly,
press
right.
conference, people were like, so any reason you're making two
You seem
Vengeance
very
movies in a row?
vengeance-focused, bro.
Right, and
And
he's
he
like,
was
it's
like,
a trilogy.
Sure.
He pulled a Vin Diesel on the red carpet of Fast X being like, actually, people are telling me it's 3. Universal's begging me for a third.
That was him saying, that's him trying to cover for the Hobbs thing, in my opinion, now. I think that's what that is. He knew about
think
that,
that's
and he's sort
part
of like...
it, and I think
He's
part
trying
of
to be like, even though I won't be in this because it's contractually, I'm not allowed to be on set, it's part of my trilogy.
Can we do 1 minute sidebar on this?
Sure.
This is just for
That's about 3 Becker themes if you want me to play it.
For the listeners to
Get it again.
understand, this is a minute sidebar on top of the 30-minute sidebar we did before we started recording
Correct.
on this very subject.
I think Universal and Vin Diesel have a very complicated marriage in which they kind of can't exist without each other, and it is their most valuable franchise ever.
Right. It's kind of like, that movie fucking with Ingrid Bergman, not Ingmar Bergman. Carry on. Sorry. Go on. What's that movie called?
Gaslight?
No. Keep going.
I missed the context. Yeah.
You know, complicated marriage. Like they
Sure.
don't actually want to break up, but they hate being together. But where would they be without
increasingly,
each other?
Making these movies with Vin Diesel is logistically impossible, right?
Yes.
And he had always been like 10, 10, 10. The goal is 10. When
Which is
they
sure.
on 5 and 6, and people were like, how many of these are you going to make? He's like, it's always been a 10 saga, has been the idea.
Yeah.
Then they get close to 10, and he's like, what if 10's a 2-parter?
Right.
Suddenly,
You can't let it go.
it's like Tarantino's retirement. It's like you start going like, I'm not going to retire when I'm 50. I'm going to retire when I hit 10 movies.
Yeah.
And then
right,
10
right.
becomes a 2-parter, and things start not counting. And now he's suddenly like looking down the barrel of only 1 movie left. And he's like, well, I said I would stop at 10. So the only thing I could do is spread out how many films 10 is.
Yes. Yeah.
And he's
yeah.
doing the DiCaprio Wolf of Wall Street. I'm not leaving. I'm not going anywhere.
We haven't even gotten Cypher's origin story yet.
No, there's a lot to do. But that'll be its own.
I want that.
I could do a whole fucking thing about Cypher, but I
Joint
won't.
security area
Big ass hit.
was a big hit, and one might call it, in the parlance of our stupid podcast,
Mhm.
that you fools are still listening to.
Yes.
A
Even this
guarantor.
episode. Yes.
Something of a guarantor.
Something of a guarantor.
A breakthrough film.
Yes.
The most successful Korean film of all time
Yeah.
at that
At the
moment.
time,
Yeah, that's basically as
Um,
big of a guarantor as you can get.
Exactly. So does he make try security area?
Very
no.
easy. Yeah.
Does he rest on his laurels? No. He decides to make Sympathy for Mr. Vengeance,
Mhm.
which in my opinion is a bit of an edgy film.
Yeah.
With some dark themes.
Yes.
If you were a Tartan executive, you might even call it Asian extreme. Yeah, I mean, he had wanted to make this before Joint Security Area. And,
Not Scenes from Marriage, although that's another good example. Ben texting that.
I just texted scenes.
That's
from there.
Ingmar Bergman, which I know.
Yes.
but
was the mistake.
did not have the juice to pull this one off
Yeah.
before JSA.
Didn't have the juice to get it made, and also I don't think he had the filmmaking craft.
Sure.
Yes.
The chops.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I could see that. He, was very happy that JSA had done well, but he said he was also quite scared. It's tough to follow up a hit like that.
And JSA was, as we've talked about, sort of that M. Night Shyamalan Sixth Sense thing of like, I'm going to design a movie that cannot fail.
Sure.
That will get finance and will be a hit. And now he's in the position of like, what do I want to
now
do?
I can
design a
something
movie
I
that
do.
cannot succeed.
Right.
Basically.
He said he wanted, JSA obviously is about the literal and political divides between North and South Korea. Sympathy, Mr. Vengeance, he wanted to deal with the social and economic divisions in South Korea. Okay? So this film does have a lot of social commentary. It also is an incredibly bleak, strange, funny thing.
Yes.
That subverts audience expectations quite a lot, I would say.
I was
and
trying
whenever you're like, I now know what this movie is about, the movie changes or just, kills someone or does something crazy.
Which this is what he's trying to do in Trio, but Trio feels kind of callous and flip about it and doesn't have the same
he doesn't have the chops.
tonal control. But this has that weird remove, that odd feeling of like, am I going to laugh? Am I going to scream? Am I going to squirm? Am I going to cry?
I am mad at our viewers for picking this director, a director I like a lot. And making me watch this movie again. I forgot how distressing this film is.
See, this is what's interesting, and we'll talk all about this fucking next week, an episode we've already recorded. I have such a tough time with Old Boy.
Old Boy is not a picnic. I mean, I'm not putting out the gingham towel there.
I was watching this and I was like, oh, what a relief.
Well, it's mostly, that a child dies in this film. That's mostly what I'm talking about.
Yes.
But Sympathy for Mr. Vengeance.
I was just trying to think of like a modern analog for what it would be like for the director of JSA to pivot to something like this.
Yeah.
And it was like if Denis Villeneuve had made Prisoners after Arrival, or if Tom Hooper more accurately had followed The King's Speech with Sympathy for Mr. Vengeance.
Yes.
That's funny, the second thing you did, but the first thing you did is actually a good call. Like, if Prisoners was your follow-up.
Yeah.
Where it's like, I want to go as dark as possible.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, he made a very agreeable film that really brought everybody in.
Look,
and then
funny. I mean, that's just a hilarious movie. Yeah. I think I once called it the least funny movie ever made. And
you did.
I think I was right.
I may have relayed that phrase to one of the stars of Prisoners at a certain
I can
point.
guess which one.
Yeah, and then he built a prison for you in his shower, right? He put you in a wood box with a tiny hole.
No comment.
Anyway, Journey to Italy was the film I was thinking. The Russell.
Oh, sure.
That marriage is fucked up.
Yeah.
Okay. Here's Parks talking about himself. I don't make genre films. Okay, buddy.
Yeah.
But I don't completely escape from them either. This film, viewed from a broad perspective, is a hard-boiled noir. If you keep narrowing it down, though, there's nowhere to escape. So he likes to play around. He likes to go into the cracks of the genre and go somewhere different.
Okay.
What suits my taste is a movie that excites curiosity about genre and takes the viewer to an unexpected place, he says.
Yeah, I mean, I think he and a number of his contemporaries, Bong Joon-ho being the most famous of them, sort of came up at a time where the South Korean film industry was booming. It didn't last for particularly long because with the economic collapse, the big companies became a lot more restrictive. But whenever great filmmakers arrive en masse, it's usually because there are these periods of flexibility. But they were able to make movies because they found opportunities to insert their own peculiarities and eccentricities and personalities into the soft parts between genre. And like that is what they do so well, is they take these genre stories and inject into the marrow, between the parts that we expect from a movie like this, their own material. And one of the great tensions in this movie is that between genre and expectation. And it's like we'll talk about it as some of the themes around the movie, the tensions between objectivity and subjectivity.
Of tension between Song Kang-ho and then the guy who kidnapped his daughter.
There is some of that by the end.
I detected a little tension there too.
I picked up, and it was pretty subtle, but I noticed a little bit of tension between any two characters in this movie.
Well, I mean, I'd say, there is not a lot of tension for a while in this movie in its way.
It's what I kind of like about it, but it gets there. It certainly gets there. I do think it's also like, we talk a lot about how much, David, you and I, Sims, like the Video Archives podcast.
Yes.
And so much of what Tarantino and Avery choose to cover on that podcast are these like completely forgotten B revenge-o-matic movies.
Totally.
Often non-American versions, right?
Sometimes.
And just like hearing them describe these movies that I have never seen, will probably never see it.
Right.
Maybe is
Called,
illegal to watch.
Right. Jim Bob's Shotgun or whatever. Right.
Love that one.
And they're like, Warren Oates is really good in it. I mean, I'm sure
I
he
bet
is.
he is. Yeah. But it makes you realize, like, it's such a weirdly durable genre of just you see someone get wronged in the first act of a movie, and then the audience just goes, I give them permission to do anything to balance the scales, right? And sometimes you make the version of that movie that's a little haunted, that's got a little bit of blood on its hands and like guilt on its conscience and whatever.
Right.
But it still is this thing of like, if they kill John Wick's dog, we are now all on board to watch 4 movies of him murdering everyone. You know?
And beyond that, what Tarantino did you read Cinema Speculation?
No, I need to read it.
It's very good. I thought it was fun. Did you read Cinema Speculation? Yeah. He loves those movies that just have one moment. In you know, the Rolling Thunder, it's Tommy Lee Jones being like, you know, I'll get the guns, right?
Yeah.
You know, like he like just that like where the whole audience is gonna go like, yeah, right. Like, and obviously John Wick has that with Michael Nyqvist saying, "Oh, right," or Tarantino loves those little kind of like explosive moments.
There's basically no point in the history of film where that is not a financeable concept.
Right.
If you just have a lean, clean revenge plot, people go like, I can get my hands around that. I understand what that is. Put the right star at the center, you have a movie, right?
Right.
And it exists in every country. Every decade has its own versions of it. There are their own versions of it within subgenres and everything.
Yeah.
And I think Park is so like interested. The whole thing with the Vengeance trilogy is like, no, but what is this like actually removed from the movie of it all? And this is a movie that like places you at a weird remove from everything, right? Has this sort of control.
This thing seems weird too.
This distance. And throws a lot of very odd character elements into it.
It's a direct reaction to what you were just describing.
Exactly.
Where, like, from the very first scene of the movie, which is this, like, parodically warm and fuzzy. Like, what could be more over the top and cartoonish than someone calling into a radio show like, "Dear Delilah, like my sister needs surgery and like I need the," you know, and it's immediately setting you up for a fall that is more interesting and nuanced than just the idea of getting you to sympathize with this one character before transplanting your sympathies, pun intended, to another one.
And he's not going to give you a single fuck yeah moment. There is not one. There is not anything approaching.
No, instead you're gonna go, what is going on? Like, what the fuck? What is it? Like when the guy is trying to kill himself?
Yeah.
In front, and you're like, if you haven't been paying attention, you truly won't know what's going on.
Right.
If you have been paying attention, you don't really understand what's going on.
No, and even if you like don't have empathy for these characters, like sympathy is the word. Thank you, Tartan Extreme
100%.
or whatever, who threw it on there, where you're just watching it and you're like, everyone's just fucking up here, you know? Like, no one looks cool. They're making, like, kind of unforced errors.
Juna Bay looks pretty cool.
I mean,
she's pretty fucking
she looks
cool.
insane.
You
bro.
Hot communist.
She fucking rules it in this movie.
She is incredible in everything. I absolutely need listeners of this podcast who may know her from things like Cloud Atlas, and maybe to a lesser extent
She's in The Host. She's in a lot
but
of
like
stuff.
the Hirokazu Koreeda film Air Doll, which only I think is a masterpiece.
But we had our little end of the Wachowski series Duna Bay trilogy of Cloud Atlas, Jupiter Ascending, Sense8.
The words that I need to say on this podcast in order to feel like I've done my job are Linda, Linda, Linda.
Yeah.
Look into
That's
it.
a Japanese movie, right?
It sure is. And
Never seen
man, is it good.
They're a band, right?
They are a band. They're a high school band. She, I believe, is a Korean exchange student who's come in, and she's like becomes into part of their friend group, and they play this song by the Blue Hearts called Linda Linda. It's amazing. I was obsessed with that movie for like 10 years.
Here's what I have to say. Duna is bae.
She is. She sure is.
So Park Chan-wook writes this film. He said he was giggling from start to finish as he wrote it.
What a little stinker.
If I want to give one keyword for this movie, it would be irony. He says, I don't think audiences are going to laugh out loud or anything as they watch it. But I do. He does. Yes, the film is grotesque. It's also comical. These characters are nice people, or they believe they are nice people.
Mm-hmm.
They don't know what they're doing is going to turn out badly, and they don't think that, including the kidnapping and all that.
Well, that's
they're caught up in destiny and social structure, and all this stuff. Before they commit. He's basically like, they commit evil acts without thinking, without committing to an evil act.
Well, it's a lot of Coen Brothers movies stew on this same sort of thing, right? The kind of like inept heist. The people who pull a crime off without really understanding the way things work and get in deep over their heads and continue to fucking trip over themselves the all this for a little bit of money kind of thing. But this one, I feel like you have people doing confusing things that are kind of funny, and then immediately the air is released from the balloon when something deeply upsetting happens. You never get to really laugh at them for too long.
No, because I mean, you laugh at the idea of someone having a screwdriver jammed into their neck, and then you stop, and you maybe laugh when the blood comes geysing out.
Yeah.
But then the scene immediately resents to, oh, there's someone being raped in the corner, and this heroin addict mother is watching her son die, and it's complicated. But I think like the real tension in the movie is summed up perfectly for me. The one shot that really epitomizes this movie is the shot after the scene where Song Kang-ho's daughter's ghost visits him, and like 5 or 10 minutes later, there's just a shot of water, the water that her ghost left behind, trickling along the floor. And something that Park says on the director's commentary is like the actual reality and the reality in a person's mind are coexisting in this world. And that's really the big tension in this movie, is between the subjective and objective realities of what's happening. And obviously that plays into the account of like how they feel about their own choices, if they feel righteous about what they're doing, moral or not. But yeah, I mean, the way this movie is shot, it's all about emphasizing this angular, widescreen objectivity versus, these very human, heightened, but resolutely and indivisibly human characters moving through it.
I think that's the thing he's incredibly good at and does throughout his entire career is the I'm not going to spell out for you when we're in reality and when we're in someone's subjective.
It would be cool if there was like a No,
but I like that you don't you tiptoe in and out of these things very quietly and softly,
and it lets you have that sort of unsettled moment where you're like, is his daughter back? Like, could this be true? Like, which is such a sad thought.
There's another thing I love. I forget who said it, but there's that old saying of like, give an audience 1 + 1 and allow them to add it together and they'll love you forever.
Wow.
Which is basically like
teach a man to fish.
That's the principle, right? But it's like if your movie is just dumping exposition on people and over explaining everything, people start to get passive and they sit back and they're not engaged, right? And it's not like you need to give them a difficult equation to solve. But you give them the two pieces and allow them to put it together, they lean in. They're like doing the work on this thing.
It's like I'm teaching my son to spell right now, and every time you try and like sound out a word, he goes, "Don't sound it up." He screams at you. But then when you watch him spell, like, he's obsessed with spelling streets, so he'll spell like Vanderbilt, and you see him putting it together, and the light on his face is transformative.
People feel it's why people love like fucking mystery movies and shit, because it's like I'm involved trying to get ahead of this thing. But he does, it's such an easy thing to do, but I find it so effective in this movie of like he basically always gets into scenes late and gets out of them early. So you're always a little displaced when you cut into a new scene where you have to go,
what's going on?
I need to figure this out. Because he's not easing me in an obvious way.
He's not going to let me sit in it for too long.
Right.
JJ's assembled a lot of quotes that Park has about vengeance.
Okay.
I'm not going to do them all.
Read some.
Revenge is something that makes you happy and invigorates you only when it is in your imagination. When it comes to actually realizing it, it's never happy and never gives you pleasure because it's an act of total stupidity. That's one thought.
Okay.
Certainly very applicable to this
film. Vengeance has never tasted so sweet.
The act of vengeance is a meaningless one. Yes, he says here it's a dish best served cold, and he's attributing that to Klingons.
A profound quote.
It's very human, right?
It does become a dish in Lady
this way.
Vengeance. It is a literal dish in that film in a way.
Movie.
Vengeance and Salvation.
If you guys think these two movies are weird, Lady Vengeance is also weird.
We'll get to it.
I just got put on record. That's the that is his masterpiece.
So fucking good.
That's my favorite of these.
This movie is so. I think this movie is really, really good.
Yeah.
I prefer it to Old Boy.
I do too.
Oh, do you? Interesting.
I think I do.
I think
I find this movie sort of lingers with me and is more disturbing than Old Boy, even though Old Boy is more like nakedly transgressive or whatever. And I think
that's why it's more effective for me.
The three leads in this movie are so like bananas good.
I'm not saying Old Boy is try hard, but it's putting effort into being transgressive, whereas this feels like it's just presenting a very bizarre reality.
I'm calling out Old Boy, and if he wants to, if
he wants to
with his hammer
you in a room for 15 years, that's as well.
Old Boy versus BECKER? Just think on that.
Did you hear that Taylor Swift is dating Old Boy Only? She took a copy of the Tartan Extreme disc out.
She's dating Odesu.
She's dating the DVD. She brings it out on stage.
Yeah.
A lot of vengeance. There are too many vengeance. JJ, you say in this document that you have too many vengeance quotes. Too many vengeance quotes.
If you don't read all the quotes, JJ might get revenge on us. So. This is the problem. It feels like a test.
I got so many quotes about vengeance. Yeah. But this movie certainly is about the limited closure or the limited, happiness one will get achieving vengeance, even if it's the purest, most just, of course Song Kang-ho wants revenge. The worst thing in the world happened to him.
Yeah.
And it wasn't his fault.
No.
At least not in any direct way. Perhaps
but also, endless spiral.
Yes, exactly.
And any action you take will hurt someone else in a way that could make them want to get revenge on you.
Okay, so
whether or not you're aware of it. David.
Yes.
David, you're a critic.
Yep.
Sometimes you review things. Movies, most of the time.
Usually.
Sometimes you say something and people go, yoink.
Oh, they pull the quote?
They pull that quote. They smack it on a poster or a trailer or an ad.
True.
Put it on the box of the DVD, like Richard Lawson saying that Mrs. Peregrine was Tim Burton's return to form, or his best film in ages, whatever it was.
Right.
Well, I got some pull quotes for you.
Okay.
How about this? Danny O'Dwyer says, "A dream come true. Holy hell."
What are you talking about?
MinMax says, "The greatest game development documentary ever made."
Oh, these are all people working in the gaming community, I feel
Chris
like.
Bratt from People Make Games.
Uh-huh.
He said extremely special.
About what?
Chris, but on the People Make Games account, not on his Twitter.
Okay.
Said, "Gosh, I've never seen anything quite like this before. Amazing, amazing work." I'm talking about Psych Odyssey.
Double Fine Psych Odyssey. We've been talking about this show a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a peek behind the scenes. It's a YouTube show that's a peek behind the scenes at making Double Fine's game, Psychonauts 2.
Yes.
And it's not a regular old Double Fine. You may know the game company, obviously founded by Tim Schafer. But it's not your regular kind of paint by numbers, pat on the back, behind the scenes making of.
We do things here a little bit different.
Look, I was reading all these quotes from people, video game journalists and tastemakers and stuff. Here's some quotes from people who actually work in the industry, okay? Jean-Sébastien Decant, creative director, Ubisoft. He said, "It's honest, courageous, and candid. It's great, real TV, and the truest look inside a dev team you could find." The people who are in the belly of the beast are saying, this is unlike anything you've ever seen before. Undoubtedly the most ambitious and honest dev documentary ever made. A must-watch for anyone who's into games.
Okay, I'm going to cut you off reading quotes. The show's been described as like the Beatles Get Back crossed with NBC's The Office, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's completely free to watch. No ads, 4K with optional captions, actually written by humans. And it's got many, many episodes basically taking you through the development of this game over many years. 5,000 hours of footage was captured over 7 years. It is unflinchingly honest, a rare glimpse into a notoriously opaque industry.
Unprecedented access.
And I think if you care about gaming, it is a really interesting document to get into. But even if you don't, it might be quite compelling. You can watch the entire series for free with no ads right now in 4K with real captions made by a human if you go to doublefine.com/check to start your Psych Odyssey.
And if you want to hear more pull quotes, you can email me at pullquotes@griff.org.
Great. The two main actors in this film are both in JSA.
Okay.
Right?
Yep.
Song Kang-ho and I struggle with his name, but Shin Ha-kyun, I think, is the guy.
Why are you looking at me? That's as close as I would get.
Hey, you.
Yo.
So he's got them coming back. And then Bae Doona Bae, had made her debut in The Ring Virus, which is the Korean remake of Ringu.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And then she's in Barking Dogs Never Bite, the not very good first Bong Joon-ho movie.
It's a pretty good start.
Definitely. And obviously she is a blank check favorite in that she has been in 3 Wachowski projects. And she's also in The Host. She's amazing in The Host. She is amazing in Air Doll. Is that what it's called?
Sure
the Korean movie. Do I know? Is she in anything else? She's in so many things. She's had such a diverse career.
Why do I feel like
She was in Broker, another Korean film.
Yeah, which I liked. So she's new. Park says all three of them are geniuses. He does not overnote in his opinion. He doesn't want like, whatever, like particular requests for them, but he does say he hates needless movement.
Well, he talks about that being his big mistake on his first two films, that he tried to treat his actors like models.
Action figures, right. But I think he just doesn't like actors who maybe like do a lot of like hand stuff or like fiddle with a cigarette or any of that.
Weird he's never cast me. I hate business, and I'm famously still.
Yeah, I guess this is through translation. He's basically saying like, I hate business. Yeah. Yes.
No, but it makes sense. His films are so controlled, and there is such meaning behind any movement, gesture, image, sound. You don't want people throwing out errant signals. He's trying to keep the frequency pure.
Yeah, this is why I've always felt a twinge of regret whenever he makes television, which he's doing again, because I feel like his particular skill set, his virtuosity as a visual storyteller is not suited to the scheduling demands of a television show.
That's the biggest fucking thing. When people talk about the difference between TV and film, it's like scheduling's the real thing that fucks you over in TV.
You can't make all 6 hours of The Little Drummer Girl look like a Park Chan-Wook movie because you do not have time.
No.
And I am very skeptical about it. I'm sure The Sympathizer, his Robert Downey Jr. show, among other people, will be
an actor who's fucking famous for business. I'm now realizing how weird it is.
No, but it looks like the characters he's playing in that are very normal
Simple.
and regular.
Yes.
But he I just feel like he operates better and more naturally in the limited canvas of a feature-length film.
It's easier to exert greater control of a canvas this size versus like making a TV show. If you're directing the whole fucking thing, is like painting the Sistine Chapel or something.
Yeah, Sims, I don't know if you got this. It was part of like the swag they sent out last year, but they sent out this massive book of his storyboards for Decision to Leave. And
does he draw them himself?
I think he might or must.
A lot of that stuff goes on the street, I gotta be honest.
Yeah, I mean, this one, and it's only in Korean, all of the annotations, which is all the more reason why it's difficult for me to get much value out of, but it's like so immaculate.
Cool.
It's so, I mean, he's not as famous a storyboarder as maybe like Bong Joon-ho, but it's still
he's
like,
a pretty famous. His shots are very complex.
But he looks
and this movie is filled with crazy, crazy stuff.
But he's and I'm not saying Bong Joon-ho's not, but he's extremely attuned to the surprises you get on the day from his actors and from the location. Like he has a plan, but he is extremely responsive to what someone like Song Kang-ho is going to do. Sims is sticking me with a tape measure. From about 6 feet away.
This has become his desk toy.
A little fact for you.
He's stretched it all the way out and is tickling Ehrlich with it. And now it's just collapsed.
A little fact for you. Song Kang-ho, obviously in JSA.
Yes.
Worked with Park. Yes. Works with him again after this, obviously.
Sure.
Thirst. What a movie.
Incredible movie. Really an incredible movie.
I mean, probably the best Ebola-related movie ever made.
Outbreak. Didn't want to be in this movie. Declined it 3 times, he says. Why? Script seemed a little fucked up to him. Thought it might not be the most commercial of projects.
But after doing this, he must have been like, oh, I love fucked up shit.
Yeah.
He said basically that he was like terrified of this movie. And I guess eventually they sort of talked him around. As time passed, I realized the reason I must take the part was because it was so anti-commercial and so shocking. Would a film like this even be possible? It was scary and anxiety-inducing, but it became the reason why I wanted to do it. So, I mean, good for him doing it.
He is so fucking good as an actor.
And Park Chan-wook was then like, by the way, I'm writing a vampire movie. Let's make this movie look like fucking Disney. So just like
as
wait.
A human being, as a father. I don't know, but he is just, what a presence.
He's the most incredible actor. He has so much like emotional control, like in all his movies.
Yeah.
And he can play such a goofball.
Yes.
Right? And such a dummy, such a like lovable dummy in a movie that doesn't need a dummy, and he doesn't feel out of place. Now that's not what he's doing here. I'm just being honest.
He has the same virtuosity within his own like instrument as an actor that Bong Joon-ho will apply to like have his cross-genre pollinations in the whole films. Like he can do 7 genres in one shot. in a way, and like what he's giving an
It is the thing
character.
that makes the host so effective. Is Bong Joon-ho was like, what if I have him play all of that in the same movie? If I like frame him where the audience is going to constantly change their relationship to what kind of character he is?
Right, he's introduced. You're like, oh, this is the dumb, side character, and then he's going to become the hero of the movie.
But as you were saying earlier, like his range in that sense allows the movies to change genres on a scene-to-scene basis because his control of the dial of destiny.
The run he was on
is so precise.
That dial of destiny. It's true. He can make Harrison Ford 20 years old in a second. Shiri, which is this huge hit in 1999. Joint Security Area in 2000. This in 2002. Memories of Murder in 2003. Lady Vengeance in 2005. The Host, he's a cameo in that, but The Host in 2006. And let's not forget that he is the voice of the lion in the Korean dub of Madagascar as well.
Never would.
Wow.
Huge.
Humongous.
He's the Stiller.
But he also, something that I appreciated rewatching
and
this
then like
movie,
Secret Sunshine, and then Good, Bad, Weird, then Thirst. Like his IMDb
Madagascar,
is like jaw
Escape to Africa, Madagascar,
Not
Europe's
seen
Most Wanted.
future ones. Maybe he got
Really?
fired.
Fuck.
Secret Sunshine is one of the greatest movies I've ever seen in my entire life.
Secret
but
Sunshine is a very special movie. If people want to check it out.
fucked up in a way that I don't think
It
Park
is.
Chan-wook's movies even try to approach. Like I cannot watch.
No,
that
that's
movie
like
again.
reading this like really disturbing poem and then having a nightmare 3 days later.
Yeah, but something that that Bong Joon-ho and Park Chan-wook really keyed into around this time was that Song Kang-ho has different sized eyes, which he wears really well. I, who also have different sized eyes, do not. It just makes me look like I'm fucking deranged.
You're a freak,
but
a ghastly mutant.
I am. But I was like looking at the close-ups that they give him in this movie, and it just allows that same sort of protean quality, that impossibility to place it down in the same close-up.
Some of the most famous close-ups in recent, like the end of Memories of Murder, the shots in here, and the Parasite, him fucking driving the car, like has become one of the most iconic like shots of recent. Him doing the bad, he's smelling a fart, in that scene, and the guys.
And also at the end of the birthday party, sort of right before he snaps.
He's got just like make that guy look at a camera. I'm shivering.
It's pretty effective.
Memories of Murder,
but obviously he's not even in the beginning of this movie at all. Really,
no, it takes him a while.
It takes him a while to show up. Anyway, Park loves him
with good reason.
Thinks he's good.
Yeah, he's a good dude.
So we're introduced to Ryu. A deaf mute factory worker with green hair, trying to pay his sister's hospital bills.
Yes, very ant-like. As Dina Bay says.
Park Chan-wook loves his ants.
Yeah,
loves the feeling of controlling characters like the fates themselves and God.
But also, like, Stoker is about a woman who has like acute sensitivity, right? Like literally her senses are heightened in a way where it's like, oh, great. So the whole movie can be in Park Chan-wook vision because she sees and hears everything like a Park Chan-wook movie. And I think similarly, it helps that like you have a character who is so thoroughly struggles to take control of his environment, right? You're basically like putting him so often in the same position as the audience member, where you're like, he's in the middle of a scene where he can't really affect change. He doesn't totally understand what's going on and he can't express himself.
Right. And he's also, hell-bent on saving his sister. And yet in that one shot that scarred me, which is very, it's a very heightened bit of business with the masturbation to like those four guys who are all up and coming directors.
So fucking funny.
Can we talk about that for 20 minutes?
Yeah. So funny. I always forget the gag. I've seen this movie 3 or 4 times.
Yeah.
Always forget that gag. It's incredible.
Oh, really?
They live in the worst apartment complex in the world.
I tried. And she's in agony with her kidney disease, and he is obliviously eating in the extreme foreground at the end of that shot. And so, like, even though he cares about nothing on this earth so much as saving his sister, he is in that moment, you're completely oblivious to it and sort of heartbreaking in a fable-like way.
Well, and you think you're hearing people having sex.
Yes.
A man and woman have sex with each other, and then you find out it is 4 guys who are all lying on a bed together, hands on each other's shoulders.
Now, have you guys
jerking
ever
off.
done that at the Blank Check Studios?
No, we
Not
haven't done
yet.
a Porky's chain. No.
Yeah, and then the one guy has a picture of a naked lady taped to the back of his head. When he tilts his head over, the other guy like readjusts it.
Yeah.
And then the camera pans like across the wall, and it's her writhing in
It's
pain.
been difficult because ever since seeing this movie when I was 18, I can only masturbate with my hand on the back of a friend.
Man.
Yeah,
That's fine.
And there needs to be two friends in front of that friend.
We've been on vacation
I have to be in the
together.
back. David knows from experience,
Yes.
but
Yeah.
So what else is going on? Well, I mean, what the early thing in the movie is he's going to get swindled out of a kidney.
Correct.
But yeah, is there anything else in this sort of early? You haven't been there, all right? Stop saying all the things in this very strange movie happened to you, because I don't think it's true. Most of these incidents are quite implausible.
You're gonna come back on in 5 years and apologize for everything you said in this episode.
But the shots.
If someone's a kidney dealer, not trustworthy.
No.
It's just not a trustworthy position.
Not all of them, David, and that's not fair.
I know you're right. I'm painting with a broad
Ben knows a
brush.
couple.
you gotta
good ones.
read the Yelp reviews before you sign up.
Yes,
for
Okay,
that
well, what
shit.
if your kidney dealer office is in an abandoned room?
Terrible.
Well, maybe they're going for a certain design concept, David.
Windy?
Yeah, open.
The aesthetics up there. I mean, the acoustics are amazing. And he's there to see the guy slap the sticker advertising the firm. What the fuck you call it? The outfit.
Yeah, Tom Cruise
in
does
the
work for
bathroom.
this company.
He
Yeah.
does. And Josh
It's like
Lucas.
something's up with this place.
But I love the shots of that series of silhouette shots of them climbing the stairs. I mean, it's. You could argue that it's a bit fat phobic because the whole focus of it is on the guy in the back who's a heavyset guy and he's like laboring, but it does sort of call attention to the physical comedy and just like the emphasis on human foibles and just basic humanity that you get throughout this movie about the fates and about uncontrollable destiny. Even in the most elaborate and cartoonish and heightened scenarios, the focus is on the minutia of the human experience, like the comic minutia of what it is to be a person.
Well, I just love a good people keep making the exact wrong decision movie, you know?
Sure. And that is, yes, right.
The
I would
changing
not
lanes.
Right. And just sort of like what you're saying, the cosmic cruelty of like, he goes to try to sell. Right. He can't give her his liver because
he has the wrong
incompatible blood type.
There's a lot of, you don't have A, you have B.
Right.
Yes.
And everyone talks to him like he's an idiot.
Yes. And there's a lot of like point of view shots where you're like in his head and you
Which
can
I
tell.
think is what's so effective about like placing him at the center of the movie and making us, the audience, feel like him, where you're like, this is so frustrating that you can't express to this person what's going on. But tries to sell, is it kidney or liver? Sorry.
Kidney.
Tries to sell the kidney, wakes up, they've taken away from him, they've robbed him
You can live
blind.
without a kidney, you need your liver.
Of
Now,
course.
some people take some of their liver out and then you put it in someone and it kind of grows, which is crazy.
Sure.
But I think that's more complicated.
Sometimes you eat it with a nice Chianti.
Fava beans.
Yeah.
The same aftershave you wore at the trial. Whatever. Go on. Can't do Hannibal lines all day.
But of course, it's like he goes to see the doctor first. The doctor's like really long waiting list. I don't know if you're going to get a kidney to match your sister anytime soon.
No chance. And then, of course, right
Takes
after
the
he gives up the
drastic
kidney, the
move,
doctor's
wakes
like,
up.
I've never seen anything like it.
This is the
You're
fastest
number
it's
one
ever
on the list.
happened. Now, of course, you have $2 million to get me, right? Or what is the conversion?
Classic John Q situation.
I'm not sure because I'm not sure what the won was worth like 20 years ago. I do think there's been more fluctuation in that currency, but it's about 1,000 won to $1.
Okay.
So they need like tens of thousands of dollars at least, maybe hundreds of thousands.
Sure.
Like a lot of money.
Yeah. So now he's fucked. He's down a kidney. They
took a kidney, but then he also had to pay money.
Correct.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, it's a real double whammy.
Right. So he's down a kidney and cash.
He's down all his available.
It's like that time when I had to
right.
pay money to listen to BECKER talk for half an hour. It's a very similar situation.
I mean, BECKER is the doctor.
Yeah.
He's not. I don't know why I said
BECKER
that.
went to Wondery, that it was like a paywalled podcast.
I regret this already. I have to apologize for that time on the podcast when I brought the conversation back.
You brought
to
it back
BECKER.
to BECKER.
Yeah.
Back to Beck, baby.
So they now need money.
Now you need money.
He's got a girlfriend played by Duna Bay, who is a hot anarchist. And she's like, well, how about we kidnap the how about we get some money? No, I think pretty much right away.
Has he already been fired at this point?
Yes. She's basically like, let's get vengeance on the executive of the company that laid you off, right?
Yeah.
And I guess they want to kidnap the older daughter, right? Like they kind of get diverted to the younger daughter.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
But like, why don't we, kidnap someone and get money for it? Right. Now,
he works at a factory.
That's a bad idea.
Yes,
he works at a factory. You see, there's those scenes where like you can hear the noise of the factory and like that kind of clanging, distant way.
And it's nothing for him.
What do they make? Bullets?
Metal.
Depression.
Yeah.
They turn metal into other metal.
It does just look like, they're just pouring stuff into different things and pushing it around.
You want this kind of metal? We make this kind of metal.
It was Bong Joon-ho who advised Park to focus more on the factory and like make it more of a character.
Interesting.
Because
I feel like Bong Joon-ho is always so attuned to the sort of like social commentary of these movies. Right. Yeah.
And the Song Kang-ho character, he grew up as not particularly wealthy. Like he was, someone who became an engineer and like worked his way up the company and then sort of developed into the unfeeling,
He is not
boss.
some landed aristocrat, but he has become the man.
He has.
And Doona Bae doesn't like the man.
They go to try to kidnap his older daughter, and when they get there, he's already... There's a different...
This is the scene that is just the most inexplicable. I think it's great.
No, I think it's maybe the best scene in the movie.
A man in an act of protest over the same sort of thing has decided to commit harikiri in front of him, essentially, has not done a good job of it, and has instead just kind of done sort of like a half of a cube, on his chest. He kind of cubed himself, but he couldn't get all the way.
Like a box cutter. He lifts up his shirt. It's in a real long distance wide shot, right?
At first, yes.
And it seems like he like misses or is like air.
That's what I love about it, is he's like crisscrossing, and you're ready for there to be some Tom Savini immediate blood spurt. Right. But it's like, no, that's not how it happens. So at first you think, is this guy such like an idiot? Is the joke here that he fucked up, that the knife wasn't like, was retracted or whatever it is? And then you close up on it and you see the lines like start to form.
Yeah.
You see the thing start to split open.
Park Chan-wook way.
Then he throws his shirt down and the blood starts seeping through the shirt, and then everything's just like fucked. And their whole plan is so fucked up by a different guy having a different method for how he wants to punish this
clear,
guy for firing him.
I don't think their plan was good to begin with. It's not like without this guy, things are going to go seamlessly for them.
Work out contingencies.
But her group, because it turns out, one of the sort of running question marks of the movie is how serious is she about this whole like terrorist anarchy business? Turns out pretty fucking serious.
Yeah.
It's kind of a dark punchline at the end there. But
he had a name for them. Sorry.
She doesn't seem, she just will go to kidnapping at the first opportunity. She doesn't really feel obligated to think it through.
He calls them the Chainsmoker Squad, which I think is funny.
And that was what the inspiration for the Chainsmokers were. They were the terrorists of our age.
I'm seeing here that's not true.
But the musical terrorists. The scene is why I am afraid of ever having employees. And at this rate, it seems like that may be an unfounded fear in my life.
Ehrlich Inc. isn't hiring?
No, because I would just be constantly worried about how I was wronging these people.
Ehrlich Consumer Products.
It is wild for like how fucking mogul
just manufacture bad tape.
Obsessed our world is. I'm like, this seems like the most stressful shit in the world.
Yeah.
Being a mogul?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's probably pluses and minuses. Right?
JJ's coming for you guys. I'm telling you.
I'm like, wow. The second you make a ton of money, fucking retire.
Sure.
People were like, I want to start more businesses, and you're just like, everyone's gonna hate you. I don't know.
But you can just kind of build enough compounds that people hating you doesn't
all
get
comes
through.
Crumbling down eventually.
No, just stay offline. That's the Elon mistake. I'm like, bro, you got money. Why are you online?
That's the biggest mistake.
Yeah, well.
I still think people should retire.
I agree. People should retire, bitch.
Bitch.
So they kidnap this little girl and they bring her home. And Ryu's sister thinks they're just like babysitting her or whatever.
They really fudge that plot point. She's just like, yeah, we're babysitting her. And she's like, all right, that makes sense. We often babysit small children for long periods of time.
Of course, you're a great babysitter. You do it all the time.
When you're not working at the factory where I assume you are still employed.
They demand lots of money from Song Kang-ho. And then Ryu comes home to find that his sister has realized what's going on.
Yeah.
And killed herself in despair.
Yes.
And that's sad.
Right. And all this was for nothing, and now he's got a kid to take care of.
Right.
I think it's the scene where Doona Bae pitches the idea of kidnapping the daughter, just to go back for a second.
When they're in the van or whatever. Yeah.
Well, no, the scene with the two of them in bed, I guess, is sort of post-coital with the mirror between the two of them, which I think is so clever. You start that sequence off where the mirror's dead center at the middle of the frame, so you're only seeing their legs basically come out from either side, and then you come around the other way, and you realize, like, oh, well, he's mutant deaf, right?
Right.
He's not going to be able to speak. whenever he does speak, rather than just like subtitles under the film, it just goes full screen black with white text, which I like. It really puts like an emphasis on the few times he is even signing anything.
Right.
Because a lot of the movie he just doesn't even attempt to. But you're like, well, he wants this kind of perfect composition of both of them lying back in bed, looking forward, not looking at each other. But of course, if he's not looking at her, how could he know what she's saying? Because he reads lips, and it's like there's a mirror directly in front of them.
Yeah, that's how they do pillow talk.
Yeah, I just think it's clever.
And this leads up to what is, Park has claimed to be, and I have no evidence to refute this, the first sign language sex scene in movie history.
That. Yeah.
Hot.
What was the one? There was the movie a couple years ago that was a lot of sign language sex.
Coda.
Yes.
Wonderstruck. No, I have no idea.
Oh boy.
No, what was
it's even worse.
It's not called the Tribe. Was that what it was called?
Yes.
Oh, that's right. Yes, that film didn't really take off.
It felt like it was about to for a moment.
It is
that's
a very
the boarding
interesting
school
movie.
for the deaf.
Yeah, I do like that movie. Coda does have a weird amount. Coda has all the fucking.
Coda has a lot of horniness.
Well, Marley Maitland and
they are fucking constantly in that movie.
Well, they keep talking about how. Right, where it's like you have jock itch, you can't fuck for 48 hours. And he's like, I'm going to kill myself. I'm running this fishing boat into a cliff.
But also, she'll bring like fucking cute Sing Street Boy over, and her parents will just be having sex really loudly.
And also, they're like, ah.
Like, at first, they're making the noises, and she's like, they don't know that they're loud. And then they come out and they're like, by the way, we were fucking, and they do the finger and hole thing.
Academy Award for Best Picture.
One Best Picture. One Best Picture.
It's not a bad movie.
But there is a very like childlike quality to the entire nature of the plot. Not obviously what happens in it, but the way a lot of this information is communicated. There's that great scene where they're trying to make the little girl who they take otherwise such good care of to look upset so they can take a ransom photo.
Yes.
And it's so hard for Ryu to like run around the apartment and make her cry. Again, beating the drum of it, like how sweet and nice these people are,
this
at
is
least
not their natural
relative
state.
to what they're doing.
Yes.
It's really setting you up for fall, which comes soon.
So you're like, well, most movies would maybe just stew on this for a while. Oh fuck!
No,
he was doing this
he's going to bury his sister, and while doing that, his kidnapping trials.
It's just like the problems multiply at such an aggressive speed. Yeah.
And obviously, he's burying his sister because that place has emotional significance to them, right? Like that's where they would go as children. It's
going to have some more emotional significance to him before too long.
That whole scene, I actually, as I confessed with Trainspotting, I skipped. I've seen it before.
You now
can't watch it.
Yeah, avoid watching scenes.
I actually watched this with my daughter. It was 4 months old. She loved it.
The weirdest thing is, I watched all three Vengeance movies because I think Criterion put them up a couple years ago.
They're on Mubi as well right now?
They were like last month on the Criterion channel.
They're still on Criterion. This is their last month when we're recording right now.
Yeah.
I watched them all with my infant daughter too. I was like, you're just so crazy in the first 6 months. Like your brain doesn't work. You're just kind of. And I remember I'm just being like, this is funny. I'm watching these fucked up movies with my little potato daughter.
But you also you play like Last of Us with your son.
Yeah, you're worse than me. That's true.
We don't need to out my. I don't want like the fucking. I was going to say the CDC. That's not right. Child Protective Custody Services.
Sure.
Yeah, they are already on my case for playing. It's so cute when my son says Diablo when he wants to play Diablo 4, and he does play it. He like sits on my lap and he.
What
plays
does he say
it
when he wants to watch Pablo Pascal though?
Pedro Pascal?
Oh, fuck. God damn it.
Wow. Well, it's not like anyone talks about that guy. Or
Pablo Schreiber?
He loves him.
He likes the live-action Halo
Just
series.
to clarify, when Asa is listening back to this, and I've done this several episodes later down the line apologizing for talking about showing my son these horrible things, he is not aware there is a Last of Us television show. He's really, really hooked on the game. And then we got the Star Wars. Right. And we got the Star Wars Jedi Survivor.
Sure.
And I'm really trying hard to be a good dad and sell him on Zelda. But he has no fucking interest. If you say the word Zelda,
it's
he
funny,
will say,
right?
No, I don't want Zelda.
Zelda is colorful and filled with cute monsters and stuff. You build stuff.
Diablo.
Maybe if Zelda had more levels that were about what time it is.
Yeah, well,
your son's
like
favorite activity.
2 fixations ago. You got to keep up.
I don't know. I ran into guys on the street the other day and asked him what time it was. He was pretty excited to read off the watch.
He's still got his watch.
He still got that watch.
It's true. He was mostly excited to see Uncle Griff.
He's all about streets these days. Though.
Yeah, he's a kid of the streets.
Yeah.
But,
So you know, the little girl dies. And then we that's at the point at which we're sort of shifting more to Song Kang-ho's character.
That is sort of the baton pass.
how do you guys feel about the character with cerebral palsy, who is played by Ryu Seung-bum, who is the director of another major film that came out right after this called Crying Fist, which I highly recommend. It's like the pre-Warrior version of that story about two boxers who are both the main character and like who's going to win. You see
Sounds
them.
great.
It's
Warrior
great.
came up in another episode
the
recently.
Berlin File.
Yeah.
We were talking about it last night.
I love Warrior.
But like that for me it always sort of throws me.
It's a little much.
It's definitely an expression of like the forces of fate that are coming in here and intervening.
Yes.
But it's very over the
it
top
is
how he behaves.
It is a lot.
I feel like there's a lot of that in these 2000s. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know.
They couldn't
genre
cast.
films.
They wanted to cast an actor with cerebral palsy, but it was unsafe around the water for the actor that they hired, and so they pivoted away from that. Whether or not that's worth keeping the character, I don't know. But it
is obviously like jarring to just that's happening at the same time as this like completely horrifying thing. Like, because initially, obviously, it's happening in the background. You don't even. God,
It does feel like it's a little just sort of
but
like it's a narrative convenience to have someone who
but it's
is going to like
big
pin
hat.
themselves in your mind
right
without really having time to develop them as a character. So it's just sort
Why
of like
doesn't he just have a loud pair of sneakers?
Well, it's used as a device, I
He's
think, to
pumping up his
return us
Reeboks.
to this place so that you get, you're back and you're looking at shots of stones an hour later and that guy ambles into view and you're like,
that's
okay.
the thing. It needs to be like
but
shorthand, but it's like
I think it's
it
also
feels a little
just beatboxing.
I think it's also, deliberately knocking this movie out of one plane of reality and into this higher sort of echelon of we're in a different poetic, abstract kind of space.
Sure.
Fine.
Which goes hand in hand with like there's a tension between that attitude and the grimy reality of this crime story.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a big choice.
It's a bit of a big choice. I do think it is mostly there. So you immediately clock like, yes, that's the same guy.
Right.
I don't think it's necessary particular, but it is kind of, whatever, nightmarish.
Yeah.
Or adds to the nightmarishness.
In the
Just a
Spike
little
Lee
much.
remake, they cut that character.
There was some consideration of a remake of this movie in Hollywood. I don't
This is the one
understand what that would
insane to remake.
Because they remade Old Boy and kept the twist. And that legit, I'm like, yes, the movie didn't work or didn't succeed, but I could see a version of that movie making $30 million in the US, but not this.
It'd be like James Mangold, Sympathy for Mr. Vengeance. That's who they'd get.
Turn back the dial.
Yeah.
Look, I like Mangy more than you do.
Oh, no, I'm just saying they'd get like a down the middle, Hollywood journeyman type who would deliver a movie that would be really straightforward and you'd be like, wait, what?
I mean, yes.
But at that point, why are you buying the rights to this as opposed to just writing a new revenge thriller from the ground up?
The title's too good.
The title
well,
is good.
that is true. But like, it is this is a tangled web we weave type thing.
Yeah.
Sure. But, it's so like disrupt. You keep talking about the reality of the movie. I think that's right. And then that happening, like this movie has been so over the top. The violence that we've seen has been over the top. The sort of, twists of fate, like him losing a kidney.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, horrifying. Yes, you don't want that to happen to you, but it still feels
very bad.
cartoonish. The people who took the kidney are kind of cartoonish.
Mm-hmm.
Giving a kidney can be nice, but having one taken from you, I feel like is
or eating one with a nice Chianti and some fava beans.
Do you think Hannibal and Becker? No, I can't do that.
Now, Sims,
Hannibal Lecter?
When you murdered that guy, did you ever escape the cycle of violence that followed, or
I'm
are you still
in it.
trapped in it today?
Monkey on my back. No,
or like you would not believe how much he complains about it.
It's like enough already.
Still in a cycle of violence. No,
checks his email. He goes. I go what?
Sent to spam.
Murder shit.
Remember that murder? No, the kid falling in. You're just sort of like, oh, we're not in like funny playtime anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I feel at least.
Yes.
I know there is a sort of absurdity to what's going on that one could find kind of grotesquely funny or darkly
But that's the kind of
ironic
moment
or
that
whatever.
Park seizes on is like, now I'm going to be funny. Like
Yeah,
just when you're
I
like, okay,
know.
this shit's not funny
I know.
anymore.
And
it's like now for a laugh.
God bless him for being such a lunatic. I'm not complaining, but it was hard for me to watch.
Like
this
that's
time
the
around.
scene that follows with Song Kang-ho in the police van, and he's not in frame. He's framed out by the door, and the cop is just like repeatedly getting out of the van to take a completely unrelated phone call as it just sort of goes on and on and on, is because of the horror we just witnessed, especially funny.
Yeah.
We were saying before we started recording, like the more times you see this movie and the distance that you get from the reality of what you're seeing and the horror of the plot itself, the easier it is to sort of appreciate the dark humor.
I would agree with that.
Sure. Look, what happens in the movie is everyone goes on vengeance runs.
Yeah, they're
Ryu-
kind of multiple vengeance runs
Right.
happening simultaneously.
Ryu kills the organ gang with
Yes.
a baseball bat.
Yes.
Gets stabbed.
Mm-hmm.
So that's his journey.
Mm-hmm.
Dong-jin, that's Song Kang-ho's character, grabs Junebei and hooks her up to the electricity.
Yeah.
And covers her in a bag and tortures her with it.
Kills her.
And eventually kills her, but not before torturing her for a while.
Yeah.
And eating her lunch.
The
Literally.
gravest sin of all.
Yeah.
Lunch theft.
And then he kills.
Pride, avarice, lunch theft.
Yeah.
Not only does he eat her lunch, he kills the delivery guy.
He does. He's really. I mean, there's it's right at the end of the movie where he gets the phone call being like, "Is this person? Like, come claim your daughter's body." And he's like, "It's not me," because he's just like not a person anymore.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
He's increasingly not a person.
He
as
only
goes down this
identifies
road.
as Mr. Vengeance now.
Well, it's his dad. It's someone else separate when they called to see if he can claim his body. Isn't it?
Is that what's going on?
I'm pretty sure.
Am I
yeah.
not picking up on that?
Am I
I'm
wrong?
trying to remember.
Well, at the end of the movie, he gets the phone call on the cell phone.
Yeah,
Yeah.
telling him to come claim his daughter's body. No,
I think so.
right?
A lot's going on at that point.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm sure this would be easily resolved. But yeah, no, I mean that scene, both those scenes, but the scene where Ryu beats the smugglers, the organ traffickers with that baseball bat is, I think, as clear a preview of what's to come in Park Chan-wook's body of work as anything else here. Just like the kineticism of it.
Right.
And how it's framed for both like maximum spectacle and visceral thrill and also sickening grossness.
Yes.
Yes.
It is fascinating reading like reviews, especially the American reviews from when this movie came out, where people are like, "This is just like so perversely grotesque and violent," and you're just like, "He's barely warm."
Right. He ain't even bubbling yet.
No.
Yeah, and I mean, yeah, it's I think again, I mean, I'm just beating a dead horse here, but like I feel like that all serves a purpose, that in discrete examples in a vacuum, each of these things feels sort of like a hat on a hat and overdone. But when you contrast the cartoon violence and the operatic, savagery of what's happening with the very, very human reactions to each of these moments, you get something. You also have the tension between the capitalist and the labor, which we talked about a little bit, but these two
Yes.
guys sort of circling around each other in a mutually assured destruction.
This is from the dossier, but I do think it's interesting. Park said like he wanted the sort of working class house to be incredibly colorful and filled with, lots of like sort of charactery objects and like not wanting to fall into the cliche of like a gloomy, drab environment. Whereas Song Kang-ho's house is like fairly boring, kind of like, sort of quote unquote tastefully done, but like without a lot of atmosphere.
Very modern and cold.
Right. And yeah, like I do think like,
I mean, he's a very florid approach to violence and also to like anything that would seem depressing or negative. I mean, it is always in his films draped in color. It's always ornate. I remember, the purple box famously from Old Boy, and you could buy at the time. This was like my most coveted possession that I also ordered from like YesAsia.com, whatever, in one of those websites.
Jesus,
where
you get fucking
I know
points
I
from
like
that
basically.
place?
Do they still exist? I mean, they must, but the
think they
DVD
do,
market has taken a hit. But it would come, it was a 4-disc set of Old Boy.
In the
and
purple
it would
box.
come in the purple box with the bow on it. But like, and that is, the most upsetting thing in that movie. And it comes in this beautiful gift wrap box. I mean, that is Park Chan-Wook to a T.
Much like the Amazing
Make me
Spider-Man
happy.
2 and the Electro head that Matt Singer bought.
Exactly. It's just like that.
Yeah.
One would not
I
exist
found
without
the
the other.
review I was looking for. It's from San Francisco Gate by G. Allen Johnson. So this is when it gets his North American release. He has already seen Old Boy and is very pro Old Boy.
Sure.
Which I think makes these criticisms feel more.
But I will say, I assume what you're about to read is sort of similar in the tone of what a lot of the reviews of this movie were like in America, basically.
Yes.
Unless his review is like, I don't know, reminded me too much of my, wedding.
Like Old Boy.
Go on.
Like Old Boy, it features stomach churn and gore, but sympathy degenerates in the second half as Park's apparently ugly contempt for humanity kills off the goodwill he has built up from his irresistible plot, which hints at a Korean cultural divide for real visual flair. He says, Sympathy, by contrast, is so bloody, scatologically violent, and consistently shocking, it seems to have no larger purpose than itself, which is pretty grim. What a waste.
I feel like a lot of the reviews
Yeah.
were along those lines. And I do sympathize with being a critic and being confronted with a movie.
I sympathize with Mr. Vengeance.
I sympathize first and foremost with Mr. Vengeance.
Sympathy for Mr. Movie.
But then sympathy for Mr. Critic, who has to watch a movie in which a child dies somewhat callously and like, then all this horrible sort of like meaningless, what is it all for?
Yeah.
And like, it's tough to walk out of one of those and be like, oh, it was good. I like
Absolutely, but I'm also
but I think he's off.
This is coming like
Mr.
2 months after Old Boy comes out, and he's like, "Where's the joy and wit of Old Boy?
The joygasm of Old Boy's last half hour." Yes.
Right.
There's a quote that I have failed to source. I think it was from a book about Park Chan-Wook. I can't remember if he said it or someone else said it, but it says, "The film is too funny to be reality and too cruel to be a joke." And I think like in that middle ground, a lot of people get lost. I do think one of the reasons why I prefer the later films of the trilogy is because they do more novel things with retribution and violence and vengeance and all of that. I particularly am fascinated by the end of Lady Vengeance when it becomes more of a collective act.
Well, that's
and she,
why
like,
Lady
diffuses
Vengeance
the
is
idea of
incredible.
this guilt and violence.
And you
so
have tried
interesting.
to lock some of your enemies in a hotel
I
room
mean,
for
you
14 years.
said that I shouldn't talk about my own personal experience in regards to this trilogy, but yeah, if you want to put me on blast like that, I do that from time to time.
Vengeance trilogies have been done upon you. You have done vengeance trilogies upon others.
What
It's a
is
great cycle.
having a child, if not taking a person and locking them into space for the better part of 18 years?
That's true. And you lent us your baby jail, literally, is what he refers to it as.
You have sentenced both of your children to living in a walk-up.
That's true.
That is,
It's true. They're going to see Old Boy and be like, it's just like my life.
They're trying to poke their way out, and they're like, we're so high up.
Every night I just open the door and throw in some dumplings, which I always thought would be pretty sweet. If someone just popped
that
up in the
part's
door. and
nice.
gave me
That
dumplings.
part is
If
nice.
you're going to lock me in a hotel room, and this is obviously addressed more next week,
Yes.
and feed me the same food every time, dumplings, I would like that
Free
more
dumplings.
than a lot.
You can exercise. You don't have to know about 9/11.
Ben gets swole.
shadow boxing allowed, right? Yeah,
I would get swole as hell.
You don't have to see Transformers.
You get gassed every night to sleep. Nice.
Which I also said on
You
that
say
episode.
on the
I was
next
kind of
episode.
into the
You're
idea
basically pro.
of getting
cheaper
gassed
than
to
my
sleep.
Ambien addiction.
Do you not get to see any of the Transformers movies?
I mean, I think eventually you come out and maybe start with fucking Dark Side of the Moon, which pretty good, all things considered.
That is, if you're going to start somewhere.
Yeah.
Although obviously you don't have any of the context required.
Also, correction, it's called Dark of the Moon.
It's
because
called Dark
the
of the
side
Moon.
was copyrighted.
I see.
It's really annoying that it's called Dark of the Moon.
Incredibly annoying.
That
Drives
is
me
the
crazy.
most
That's-
and only annoying thing about the Transformers film trilogy.
Dark of the Moon rules.
It does. Wow. That last hour in IMAX 3D. Jesus.
Yes, I remember it well. I was hooting and hollering.
Yeah.
And now the beasts have risen.
Everything's changed.
It's true. Do you know about the end?
I do know about the end,
Great.
but I am strategically on paternity leave this month to avoid both Tribeca and the Beast
Yeah,
Boxing.
The two greatest boxes on American
like
cinema.
dancing between the raindrops of early
Yeah.
shitty summer scheduling.
It's like the first scene of the Grandmaster, but with movie releases.
Wasn't your daughter born 6 months ago? Yeah, but the leaves now.
Pretty much.
Yeah, that is pretty much what he did. So, Park Chan-wook says, shooting this film, a really fun, harmonious experience.
Cool.
But he admits the film came out quite vicious.
Did we hit the very ending? Just
yeah, we got to
that the Junpei's anarchist group comes.
Oh well,
back.
that's fair point.
Right.
Well, no. We should really hit the ending because yes, he kills Junpei.
Yes.
Was not going to be the end. The ending was originally going to end with him on that phone call.
Right, which is I get that as an ending.
Yeah.
Like as a you can imagine what happens next sort of thing. Right.
But you can't because no one sees what happens coming.
The actual ending, yes. But also we should, of course. He gets Ryu, knocks him out, brings him to the riverbed, drags him into the water, slashes his Achilles tendon.
Because he doesn't want to have to
watches
see
him die.
But he doesn't want to have to see him die. He wants to feel like I cut his legs and that's all. It's, I didn't.
Sure, it's kind of a. I'm just gonna bite
not the water.
I'm
Exactly.
gonna bite the air and move forward. If I eat a pie, it's the Homer Simpson thing. And
he should have said, if he had made
joke.
that reference in the moment, it would have been great.
This movie could use more Simpsons quotes from characters
I think
to
it should
each
do
other.
more just literally they're just being. Remember this episode of The Simpsons when
in the millennial remake of Sympathy for Mr. Vengeance, that's how it plays out.
Slowly back up into the bushes.
love when the New York Times pops up with an alert that's Chris Christie's running for president. Guys,
come on.
I don't care.
This is the most exciting thing since they announced The Matrix 4 in that episode I was on.
That's a good episode.
Oh, that was a good episode. Which episode was that? Where it happened?
Mononoke.
No,
I mean,
Moving
House
Moving
Moving
Castle.
Castle.
Yeah.
Sure.
Dude, can you believe this is the most baller shit of all time? The Miyazaki releasing.
Yeah, he's just like, it
his
has
movie.
a date. Show up if you want.
Yeah, fuck film festival.
I did
All of
like
them
the
are
joke
trash.
that I saw on some website that was like, he's not releasing a trailer because he's accidentally just made Morbius. He's really embarrassed.
But it's like he saw
Shit,
like
it's fucking Morbius, word for word.
But it's like he saw the campaign for The Whale and Killers of the Flower Moon. He's like, they're giving away too much.
Yeah,
he saw that
that
as like
one
the
still-
trailer for Castaway. And he's like,
Man,
they're giving away the whole game.
When that still drops in Flower Moon 20 minutes in, you're like, thank God. Okay, they're not going to make us wait too long for the him sitting at the table.
It's like when the
with
drums
Lily
kick in and in the air tonight.
But it's the last shot in that scene, and they go every possible setup in that
Sure,
kitchen
right.
before they
Like,
finally land on that one.
It's I do.
Sorry, I was just doing various camera angles.
When there finally was the news story of like he's bypassing all festivals, he's putting it in theaters.
Miyazaki,
It will
sure.
be out
How do you
in
live
Asia in a couple
in
of
the
months
summer,
and rest of the world sometime later. The first person to rush when there's like some news story, especially
and the
relevant.
poster of the film is just like a bird or something.
Yeah.
And he's like, okay.
We don't even know if the movie's about birds. They just said that it's actually not based on the book that we all thought it was based on. He's
He
just
loves to do
borrowing
that.
the
I mean, it's
title.
based on this book, but not in any
It
way.
could be about
Right,
birds.
right. It might
based
be.
on the Power Broker.
It's actually just Sully.
It's about the
Sully.
it's about
He's
the life and
remade
times of
Sully.
Jay
Yeah.
Oppenheimer.
No, but whenever there's any news story connected to one of the directors we've covered on the past, I feel like there's this mad rush from Blankies to try to be the first to post the thread with the new news tidbit so they can get all the upvotes and the comments on their thread when there are going to be 5 copycat threads. So the person who rushed to post that, How Do You Live?
Yes. How do you?
Erroneously said Miyazaki film will come out this summer, 12 minutes long. Runtime confirmed because it was 120 minutes. And they were so quick to type it out that they put in 12. And I was like, are you fucking kidding me? This thing's a short. We've been waiting 5 goddamn years and it's a fucking short.
Yeah, but he drew it with one finger.
Yeah.
He would just daub some paint.
I truly was
It's
like,
it's
that
done
is
by
ballsy.
AI. He actually revisited that AI tech demo that was shown to him.
Well,
Was
also,
like, they had a point.
kinda
pretty
good.
good. Yeah, put it out. It's just an episode of Bluey.
Yeah.
He went on,
I saw this. It was funny.
he went on the Japanese version of Blank Check and he was like, that one time that I said that AI animation was a sin against humanity. I'm very sorry about that.
Yes. And I will
gonna
be
be our
very
new
sad when
Overlord.
Harrison Ford dies.
Harrison Ford dies.
Yeah.
Yeah, whatever. All the movies are long this year. Why not go
anarchist
short?
friends kill.
They do. After he has finally achieved his vengeance,
Yes.
which has not really done much for him,
No.
he is killed by the chain smoking gang. Who
There's
are
always
Junpei.
someone else
And
who's gonna-
Junpei told him like that's
Yes.
going to happen if
Yes.
you kill him.
And the
Right.
guy who stabs him has that look where he's like sitting there kneeling down and smoking, and he's clearly never stabbed anyone before, and he's just sort of being like, "I just stabbed a guy."
Yeah.
Like that's fucking wild.
No going
And
back from
it's,
that.
It's the opposite of what you would expect in a movie like this, where he's like walking away as the car explodes behind him. He's
Right.
just like fascinated
You
by
stay,
the decision that he just
you
made.
watch.
Now, this film, Joint Security Area made about $30 million in Korea, which was the most successful Korean film ever. This film made $2 million.
And Old Boy
is that less
way
or more?
up. This is sandwiched in between two fat titted hits, right?
Yeah. I mean, Old Boy, I
out.
think made more, not as much as maybe JSA, but a lot. Was successful.
Sure.
Park, people felt betrayed. You know, but the person who really felt betrayed was me. He says, because people didn't like the movie.
Took out his vengeance on the audience.
And he loved how he doubled down by being like, fuck it, I'm making a trilogy. I'm not fucking going.
Yeah.
He thinks that the audience maybe did not love the idea of having to identify with the perpetrator of a crime and then the victim of the crime. He thought that was interesting to the structure of the film, but he says perhaps audiences didn't necessarily like to do that.
A very funny joke to follow this up with a more traditional hero's journey where you sympathize with one character the entire way, and then at the end they're like, surprise, you've been rooting for a guy who's been committing incest in front of your eyes.
Yes.
Again, spoilers for Old Boy.
Joke.
But you know, it is one of those movies I think that bombed initially, but highly influential. Very respected by other Korean directors. You know, begins whatever sets in motion. The fucking informal vengeance trilogy that defines his career.
Being so big immediately puts more retroactive shine on this movie, where it's like, now you're telling me these are of a piece.
Yeah,
I got to go back and watch the first one.
They tried to get this movie into Cannes and were rejected. Old Boy obviously played at Cannes.
This feels like a classic director's fortnight, or in certain regard. Anyway,
Warner Brothers acquired the rights to remake it. They brought in Lasse Hallström. That's a joke. That second thing was a joke.
That's who I was reaching for when I said on James Mangold. So
the writer of Broken City wrote a script.
That's the fucking Wahlberg,
Mark Wahlberg, Russell Crowe. Something's up
Hughes,
at City Hall.
Whichever Hughes brother.
Yeah, one of the Hugheses. Quentin Tarantino. Thought it was good. Big shot Harry Knowles, as you say. Put it number 1. Film didn't come out for 3 years.
It was going to be number 3 into those last 30 minutes, and then he leaned through the whole other geek.
I'm glad he keyed us into his process.
But it did not get particularly good reviews from American critics on release when it was finally released.
Yeah.
Yes.
They can suck my nuts.
But maybe releasing it that shortly after Old Boy was an incredibly bad decision.
Yeah, I mean, look, I don't think there was a pocket where this movie was going to make
but I think
a ton of money, but $45,000 definitely wasn't what they were aiming for.
Very low gross. This has to be one of the lowest grosses, North American grosses we've ever covered on this show.
I don't know. What did fucking Alice in Wonderland make?
Although it says something that Lady Vengeance, which came along, just a few short years after Mr. Vengeance came out in the United States, 1 year later, played at the very prestigious and relatively highbrow New York Film Festival. Slate.
Yeah.
So it's like there, as far as like his reputation was concerned, people hadn't written him off purely as this like torture porn.
Well, there's that.
And of course, yes, it is in an era with an era of a lot of horror that is extreme for extremity's sake. Yes,
but I do think it's just the being released here out of order. It's like it's one thing
being
if it's
released
like,
as an afterthought.
Right. If it's like, Criterion is putting out his early, less seen film, people are viewing that in the context of, I'm filling in a gap. Versus if you've just seen Old Boy after all this hype, and they're like, here's another one.
And dare I say, the Tartan Asian EXTREME branding, which even then makes you wince a little bit, just to say at least those last two words together in that way, is probably didn't help in terms of positioning this movie in a way where people are going to take it seriously.
It's putting it in a tiny box.
You're not getting perverse thrills from this movie.
You know, Sims, where I saw Old Boy in theaters was in the Odeon, like a shoebox, little Odeon theater.
You mean in London?
In London town.
It's the Odeon. Not Odeon.
It is what I fucking say it is.
Odeon, of course, is London, Britain's biggest theater chain. Do you know which one? You said it was a shoebox?
It was the tiny theater in a big building in like Leicester Square.
So Panton Street. Yeah. Cool. So that's cool. The weirdest thing about Leicester Square, there are 3 Odeons that are like basically all looking at each other. There used to be 4, I think. And the big one is just one screen. That's where you like premiere your movies, the Leicester Square Odeon.
What if I made the bit, I now think that Ehrlich grew up in London?
No. And then there's the West End Odeon, which is sort of like a normal multiplex.
What, you went there after school?
Yeah.
And then the Panton Street Odeon, where you saw that was the weird
There
one.
should be
That's
a
where
plaque
you'd see
out
some
there.
weird movies.
That's where and the screen, they had just installed digital projection, and the screen had all those dots on them. And it was really ugly. And I was just seeing it as a novelty because I'd seen Old Boy about 15 times on DVD. And I was like, I wonder what this looks like on the big screen. It was before it had come out in the United States. And I made it about 30 minutes, and I was like, all right, I got the vibe.
Wow.
But
Wow, walked out. Guess you don't like Old
never
Boy
went
that
back
much.
to London again.
Do you want to play the box office
I
game?
desperately want to play the box
My
office
God,
game.
Jesus, the desperation.
I'm just curious about this one.
August 19th, 2005.
It's a good season for Griff.
It's a good season for Davey, too. It's freshman year at college in the bag. Summer internship in Boston happening.
Where were you interning? At Shears?
The Boston Phoenix.
Okay.
And number one at the box office, it's a comedy. It's the launch of a career, I would say, a filmmaking career.
It is The 40-Year-Old Virgin.
It is Yon 40-Year-Old Virgin.
Yeah.
Which opens to a healthy $21 million, but then holds exceptionally well.
Right.
And
Bag of
goes
sand.
over 100.
Hits 100. And just a month earlier, Wedding Crashers comes out.
Yes,
makes
that's right.
A
Yes.
metric shit ton of money.
Well, they crashed all those weddings.
And they got paid for each wedding.
That's right.
Audiences paid them back
Yeah,
for
the
each
ticket
wedding.
was actually like so much more, and they're
Right.
like, "How?" And they're like, "It's per wedding."
It made like 205 crash weddings domestic, which is insane.
It wasn't a big hit.
But I think it was sort of like, well, that's obviously the comedy hit of the summer,
Right.
and then 40-Year-Old Virgin comes out later, does
Makes less
incredibly
money.
well.
I mean, Wedding Crashers made more money.
Absolutely.
Right.
But it was sort of like, oh, there's room for two. And obviously, this is the one that's going to have the longer tail, both as a movie itself and also
Right.
this is
I mean,
going to spawn the
And
entire.
everyone was wrong. And
Apatow
Wedding
Industrial
Crashers
Complex.
is discussed to this day,
Yes,
constantly.
A sequel is still threatened.
Yeah, that's like that's like a hurricane.
They were about to film it for HBO Max, and then Owen Wilson bagged it at the last minute.
Good for him.
They
Because
were
he-
like set up.
He
Great.
was told about it and was like, "Oh, that's a bad. Can you do a mater for me?"
Wow.
Yeah, I was like, "Wow, this is a
Wow,
terrible
Max?
idea."
HBO Max? Wow.
Yes, those movies
What's
could
the
not
place
be
for
less.
What's the
less
what?
similar.
The place for HBO. Where do I watch
Oh,
it?
Max is the one to watch when you want to watch
good.
HBO.
Okay, all right. Okay, so number one is the 40YO Virgin. Obviously, it's that sort of weird thing of like Carell is the star, but The Office is hitting after they make it, but before it comes
They've done
out.
6
like,
episodes.
and so
the
it's
6
like,
episode mid-season replacement
Right.
before this.
suddenly this guy is going to be hot, all
Right.
that stuff.
Right. They kind of, renewed The Office on the promise of this is testing well, not
Right.
knowing the thing was going to be that big.
Right. And then he
And then that
spends the rest of his
transforms
career
everything.
being a movie star while
Right.
making The
They had
Office.
no idea that he was going to scream the words Kelly Clarkson as someone ripped off his chest hair.
That scene is funny.
That's also, I guess it's still kind of the thing, but it's like,
I
if
mean,
you're,
Rudd is the funniest part of
Rudd
that
is
movie.
unbelievable. But
He's-
Romney Malek is incredible. The whole crew is
They
fucking
are all
incredible.
good. They
That
are all
movie
good.
is astonishingly
Yeah.
funny.
Um,
And it is brilliant.
But that thing that I think still basically exists of like, the people don't really release major things the last 2 weeks of August.
Totally.
So
right.
if you're
Graveyard.
the big movie, the last big movie through the door, the first or second week of August, you probably just run the table until like mid-September.
But
But
another film's coming out this week.
Hmm.
A film that I assume was kind of thinking it would be number one.
Red Eye?
R-rated thriller, Red Eye.
Yes.
Yeah. Now, David's crush on Rachel McAdams, post-Wedding Crashers, is already
Through
at
the roof.
1,000.
Have you ever considered kidnapping her aboard a commercial airliner and threatening her father's life, who's played by Brian Cox?
And then there's also a
If she
grenade
doesn't-
launcher, a
if
rocket
she
launcher at the
doesn't
end.
move somebody's hotel room.
Jayma Mays is in that one, too.
She sure
Correct.
is.
Everyone's having fun. Red Eye's great. Obviously,
Yeah, Red Eye
Cillian
rules.
Murphy playing the crazy guy.
I want to put Craven on a bracket.
I
sometime.
would
He's
love
overdue
to
for
put
a
Craven
bracket.
on a black. It's a long career.
It is, but then
And there's some, kind of fallow
I was
periods.
looking through it and I was like, it's more consistent than I
Man,
remembered it being.
It's a very interesting person
is.
to
the
talk
bit
about.
where Rachel McAdams stabs Cillian Murphy in the neck with a pen
Yeah.
is probably the Mr. Vengeance-iest moment of Rachel McAdams' career. I would
Yeah.
venture to say.
What
That
about
movie's
when
kinda
that
like
guy
Vengeance
gets sucked into a
Airlines.
jet engine, though?
I mean, that was pretty good.
Oh, no, he died.
Park hasn't gone that far. Oh no, he died.
It's still the funniest line reading.
She is on.
People post that clip on Twitter once a
Yeah.
week. I always watch it. I always laugh.
She's the fucking
Oh
best.
no, he died.
She's on this season of Dave, the FX original series Dave, where the whole bit is that she's like his ultimate celebrity crush, and then he actually has to meet her. and the whole thing is like, oh, she's actually everything he wanted her to be.
Sure. Because she actually probably is.
Right.
She's the total package.
Right. And it's kind of an astonishing performance where it's just like, your job is to just be the most charming, funny person in the world.
She didn't even know she was on that
bitch.
show.
Yeah, exactly.
Have any of you guys seen Jury Duty? Not the Pauly
I've
Shore
watched
movie,
Jury Duty,
but the show.
Yes.
I've seen the Pauly Shore movie.
Both great.
I've seen
but
both.
I think I'd say the television show even better. I don't know what I'm thinking about.
Marsden playing himself. I assume this is what you're bringing up.
Marsden's
Fucking
incredibly
funny.
good.
Also, there's a role that Griffin would have killed in, but
All right, well, don't make
neither
him
here nor
feel bad.
well, they're the guy with the girlfriend or the tech guy?
there. Either one. Take your pick.
The tech guy, I think that's the most astonishing comedic performance I've seen in a little while. That guy I'm
Pretty
blown away
special.
by. And no disrespect to the girlfriend guy, but I did have that thought of why wasn't I put out for this. David, what's number 3 at the box office?
It's a film we covered on this podcast. It is it was out last week. It's the second week coming down from number 1.
Lady in the Water?
Nope. It is a
In the right year.
sort of an action thriller drama.
2005, first week of August, previous number 1,
Yeah.
action thriller.
Sure.
Well, you're saying sure, like it's not
I mean,
real.
action's maybe a little strong. It's a thriller, sort of like
Insomnia.
a drama thriller. No.
That was 2004.
What studio?
Paramount Pictures.
Paramount Picture.
Picture a
August
bunch of
release.
stars dancing across the water.
Skipping stones.
And then whoo, in a circle.
Swirl it around that
they
mountain.
encircle a mountain.
And you know what?
Paramount Pictures.
You know what I bet is atop that mountain?
What?
America's worst streaming service.
How dare you? Peacock's probably worse.
Have I talked about
Peacock has Summer House. Keep yours.
Paramount Plus doesn't let you deactivate devices.
Paramount Plus is not very good at being an app.
It's
which
not.
I think it should improve at doing that because
Yes.
that is, of course, its job.
Right.
But Paramount Plus does have things I want to watch
I'm
on
also
it.
just like, let me be vindictive and not allow my exes to watch my Paramount Plus. I'm not allowed to kick them off? Really? Every other app
That
fucking
is
offers
vindictive.
Aren't you looking for any opportunity to stay connected with them in some way?
this. Yeah, but it doesn't work.
See them log in, Star Trek Picard or whatever. Anyway,
Yeah, they're all Picarding it up.
third season good. Come on, what is this hot film that
Fucking
we've covered?
Paramount-
We covered it during
we've
the.
covered it? Oh, it's Collateral.
No, it's not.
Fuck, that's
You
2004.
fool.
Yeah.
Yes,
It's 2005.
this is 2005.
It's a Paramount.
2005.
We've
Think about
covered it.
George Bush in office.
One of our directors. Manchurian Candidate?
No.
Fuck. That's 2004 as well.
Damn it.
2005 is kind of a fallow.
I know, but both of those are
Time.
Paramount. Is it a star vehicle?
Yes, but it is also an ensemble, and that is referenced in the title of this film. And the premise.
Oh, the ensemble.
What if you had some of these?
A couple guys.
More than a couple.
100 guys.
Less than 100.
2 guys.
Oh.
2 guys.
It is
2
4
guns.
brothers.
Oh.
4 of them.
A Friday
1,
night
2,
special.
3, 4.
Yes.
Not a movie. It's a hard movie to sort of
Yeah.
tee up
No,
because it's
yes,
like,
yes.
what if there were 4 brothers?
Yeah, but it's kind of a revenge dramatic.
Yeah, it's not.
With
it's not
more
really an action
local
movie, right? I
politic
mean, it has
intrigue.
some
Yeah.
gunplay or whatever,
does,
but
yeah.
it's more like.
I
It's got
enjoyed-
Garrett Hedlund taking a shit.
Hey.
It's got everyone taking a shit.
I enjoyed those
Wahlberg
3
takes a shit.
seconds where I thought there was a movie called 2 Guys and it did really well at the box
Well, there was
office.
2 guns.
Yeah.
Now,
Forget
remind
that.
me, did they jerk off together in that one?
Yeah, they're hands on
I
back.
remember all the things, right? They fuck Sofia Vergara on top of a washing machine. They don't all fuck her. I can make it.
Jesus
The 4 brothers, of
Christ.
course, are Mark Wahlberg,
Yes.
Terry Gibson,
Andre
Garrett
3000,
Hedlund, and Andre Bennett.
Garrett Hedlund.
Yes. Number 4 at the box office. It's the biggest comedy of the year. We already mentioned it.
Wedding Crashers.
It's hanging around,
Yeah.
crashing more weddings by the day.
Yeah.
Number 5 at the box office is a horror film that is Reverse Get Out. I once called it underrated on one of my lists that The Atlantic made me write during the pandemic, and someone made fun of me for that.
Skeleton Key.
I think it was Olivia. Yes, Skeleton.
Which you and I both like. A good movie.
Good movie.
Ian
Reverse,
Softly
not to
directed that?
correct, not to spoil it, but it's literally just Reverse Get Out.
I mean, as if I have not seen Skeleton Key on
Great movie.
cable on a daily basis for the
Probably
last
in like
15
Kate
years.
Hudson's top 5 movies.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Now I know that's
Yeah.
she's got
Well,
a top heavy
number
list.
1, music.
Yeah. Good fucking late Jenna Rollins performance.
Yeah, no, it is. I think it's just a fun, effective
It's just a-
programmer
yeah,
with
yeah,
a pretty decent,
exactly.
like swampy vibe.
I agree.
Yes.
Those August horror movies used to be credible, even as recently as 2005. They had
Yeah.
a little bit more credibility than they do
Even
now.
post.
Yeah.
You've also got March of the Penguins. Them penguins be marching.
I think it's because horror's become so big now, though, that if you have a good horror movie, you're not dumping it in August.
Yeah, but Barbarian was an August release.
That's a weird exception to the rule where no one...
September 9th, I want to say.
Do you know that movie still does not...
Yes, you're right.
I've done so bad in this game.
Well done.
Got to make that recent poll.
Do you know that movie still does not have a physical release?
That's fucked up.
Isn't that
Come on,
fucked
Disney.
up?
I want to watch that.
Is it on Disney Plus?
Yes.
Yeah, it's on Disney Plus
Really?
in the kids section. I have no fucking idea.
I think it's on Hulu.
Yeah, I was going to say they don't. Have
yeah, those penguins be marching all the way to 77 domestic.
Oh baby.
Number 7 at the box office. One of the most instant fucking relic movies. Like, just like, let's never speak of this again. The Dukes of Hazzard.
Oh,
yes.
yes.
It's just like 2 years later, everyone I think was just like, why did we do that? Like,
I was gonna guess where it was because it opened pretty big. It dropped like a fucking stone.
Yes.
People a
it
week
did
later
make
were
$80 million.
but it like opened to almost
it opened to 30. 30.
Yeah,
30.
yes.
Not bad.
Jessica Simpson, not a movie star, it turns out.
Not a movie star,
Willie
driving around
Nelson,
in a Confederate
Burt
flag
Reynolds.
car, probably not advisable in the 21st century. But the Dukes of Hazzard was there for
It was there.
Number 8 at the box office, a new film. Oh boy.
Oh boy.
Animated.
Oh boy.
I just wanted you to guess this one.
2005.
I know we don't usually guess those.
Animated. What studio?
The studio, of course, is...
What distributor?
Weirdly, it was distributed by Disney, but it's a British
Is it Valiant?
film. Valiant.
Yeah, right. That was some output
Which was
deal.
like
they didn't make that.
Ealing or something. Like, it was like one of those, like, you know, fucking Tony Blair cuts a ribbon
It's
being
like
like, Britain's going to make animated movies again. And it's
RAF
Valiant.
pigeons.
I was
Like,
going to say,
sew
it's
the
about a
ribbon back
pigeon,
together.
right?
Yeah.
It's like, what was the fucking movie that you guys were obsessed with, the trailer with the birds, Will Smith?
Spies in Disguise.
Spies in Disguise. It was that before that.
Or like Chicken Run but shitty.
You've also got Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, another film we've covered, and your favorite film of all time, Sky High.
What a fucking masterpiece. Have you ever seen Sky High, Ehrlich?
I mean, I saw Sky High in theaters the day that it opened, standing for Nicholas Braun, day one.
Same. I bet so big on that guy so early where I was like,
Well, you gotta bet big. He's tall.
He's incredibly, and he was that tall at 15.
Rangy. Yeah.
You've seen that movie, right?
I have. It's very
so
fun.
Sky High is adorable and perfect live action original
I'm more of a
teenage
Zoom
fare
guy.
that we have deprived the
Absolutely.
Zoomers of.
And you're like also still better than most superhero movies.
Oh yeah.
How much
considerably.
better? Like we were talking about, like you were saying, Sims, like post Spider-Verse. You're like, maybe all fucking MCU movies should have been animated to begin with.
Yeah, why not?
Where I'm like, you watch Sky High and you're like, all superhero movies should be this silly.
Did you guys see the fucking Spider-Verse?
All right,
See that
enough. Another film I
So
want to
good.
shout out in
It's
the
really
top
good.
10. We already talked about Spider-Verse.
Off mic.
That's amazing.
Ben, did you see Deuce Bigelow, European Gigolo?
No.
The
I
power
didn't.
of Pisa was coming out of his crotch.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
No, I didn't stick with it.
You
be
did.
fair-
I assume you saw the first one.
I did see the
Yeah,
first
yeah,
one.
To be fair, Ben wanted to go see it, but he had forgotten to renew his passport. Wouldn't let him into the theater.
There
Yeah,
he is.
right. So the poster makes it look like the Leaning Tower of Pisa is his weenus.
know, so
More
I
like
think-
the Leaning Tower of Pisa.
I think that's just an
boner.
accident. I think that was a
You
coincidence.
think that's a
they
coincidence?
were shooting. They were actually doing a whole other thing, right?
Right.
They were
gonna
just
shoot you on
trying to
this
take
beautiful
a,
park
a
bench.
nice
Yeah.
photo of Rob Schneider. They saw that in post. They were like, "Uh-oh, we can work with this."
Will he ever complete the trilogy? Will he ever?
Deuce Bigelow, what, goes to Antarctica? Like,
Vengeance
what's next?
Gigolo.
Deuce Bigelow, Vengeance Gigolo.
Deuce Bigelow legacy.
Oh, boy. They don't make them like that anymore. Good.
It was before Rob Schneider discovered Twitter, because it was before Twitter
Yeah.
invented. And
His real art form.
yes, that was the end of the Bigelow
Yes.
verse.
His
Anyway,
identity, yeah.
Spider-Verse.
Is Deuce Bigelow related to Catherine Bigelow?
Yes.
Yeah. And they addressed that in the film.
Yes.
He watches The Loveless.
Yes.
I came into this recording session floating 48 hours after seeing Across the Spider-Verse.
Yeah, I saw it
Still
last night.
Half drunk off my margarita at the
Fucking
Alamo.
rules.
Just so, like, it was like completely levitational. Just so fucking good.
Well, it's just you watch it and you're just like, what? You want to yell at every other movie, like, what's your fucking excuse? Just do this. Try this hard.
I was saying to
Challenge
you, I had
yourself
never
this
seen
much.
this reaction before to a movie where the moment it cuts to be continued, the entire audience
Yep.
groaned loudly,
Yep.
and then immediately, as soon as the groan ended, began cheering as loud as they could.
Can I say, incredibly smart decision that they backed off of this being Across the Spider-Verse Part 1 and instead went, this is Across, the next one's Beyond. The
I
Part
agree.
1, Part 2 shit has to
I hate Part 1, Part 2.
die.
Yeah. Well, it kind of has died, and so I was alarmed that they were bringing it back, and I'm happy they did that with Infinity War too. Remember that was going to be Infinity War parts 1 and 2.
Yeah. But people are like, my only beef is that
Dead Reckoning is doing it.
Well, Dead Reckoning is going to be a masterpiece. Doesn't matter.
But I'm also just like, call it Dead Reckoning and Deader Reckoning or something. Give them different fucking titles.
Just Dead Reckoning Reloaded.
Paramount's on the phone.
Dead Reckoning.
No, but like $1 million.
People are like, it was annoying to me that Across the Spider-Verse was only half a movie, and I was like, that could not be more of a movie. There are 300 movies in that movie.
I think it's a full meal. I think it's setting up a lot of stuff for the next movie, and there are larger unresolved things. I think it is a full movie.
I mean, whether it is or not, like, yeah, sure, it leaves you hanging. But I was like, who could need more movie out of that?
It's giving you so
My
fucking
brain
much.
is bleeding movie, and I'm loving it.
So 2 hours, 20 minutes, longest American animated film.
Yeah, it's long.
Yeah.
It's longer than Hayao Miyazaki's How Do You Know?
If the next one's 2 hours, I wouldn't be like mad about that.
I like things being shorter. I just think they use their runtime well. There's certainly a lot of fucking
I
shit
agree.
in there.
I was never unhappy to be watching Across the Spider-Verse.
The last 90 minutes of that movie could just be Miles Morales like kicking rocks, and I already would have been like, this was the best time I had at the movies this year.
Here's my gripe. Didn't even release it in 3D.
No. Well, I don't need that.
The animated films always get released in 3D. Spider-Verse, unsurprisingly, first Spider-Verse in 3D is really good.
This movie in 3D would have killed you. Imagine watching this in your new Apple Vision Pro.
And I would have died happy.
Yeah.
All right.
I just moved my 3D TV into my new apartment. 3D TV survives. And I got my fucking original Spider-Verse Steelbook with the 3D disc, and I threw it on. I went, oh, baby. Can't wait to watch this new one. Yeah.
Oh.
He moved.
Wait, did you move to Brooklyn?
Downtown Brooklyn.
Hey.
He's a Brooklyn boy. Yeah, downtown Brooklyn nooms.
Yeah. I had to keep the brand strong, so I moved to downtown Brooklyn. But yeah.
Enough. Wrap it up. I'm peeing.
Okay. Yes. You're peeing?
Not right now. I'm going to.
Ehrlich, anything you want to plug? Paternity leave?
I like that you clarified, David, that you weren't actively peeing on mic, just in your pants.
Right. He's choosing to do it now.
Yeah.
I would love to plug Sony Animation's Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. Is that the full title?
A film that should be rewarded.
Yeah. I think it hasn't been getting enough press. Very, very good. I don't know. I'm currently on leave. By the time this comes out, I will be back at work, ready and braced for Barbenheimer and Mission Impossible: Dead Reckoning and all the joy that July should hopefully bring.
Hell yeah.
My podcast cohorts at Fighting in the War Room will kill me. They will slice my Achilles tendons and leave me to drown.
You often forget.
In a river in South Korea if I do not mention that podcast. I already mentioned its name once. That's enough.
Yeah. Do you have a Spider-Verse episode?
I guess we're talking about it tonight. Okay. I don't know. It's a matter. Yeah. It'll just be me being like, the movie fucking ruled. Yeah, you already got the good stuff here.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. That's it.
Hey, great. Well, thank you all for listening. Please remember to rate, review, and subscribe. Thank you to Marie Barty for our social media, helping to produce the show. Thank you to Joe Bowen, Pat Reynolds for our artwork.
Thank you to Becker.
I was waiting for this.
I hope Harrison Ford lives forever.
Yep, of course. Long live Harrison Ford. Thank you, Joe Bowen, for the aforementioned wooden carve-outs of our faces. That's mine. Don't fucking drink that. That's mine. I put that in the fridge for myself. I just saw you eyeballing it. I don't want you to drink it. It's an Olipop Cola. Put the Becker theme on again, Bo. Thank you to Lee Montgomery and the Great American Owl for our theme song. Thank you to AJ McKeon, Alex Barron for our editing, JJ Birch for our research. You can go to blankcheckpod.com for links to some real nerdy shit, including our Patreon Blank Check special features. Do commentaries on film series. Crossing some oceans.
Yeah, I think it's Oceans, right? I can check. So this episode's coming out July 2.
We'll do the aforementioned Little Drummer Girl coming up.
We just did Oceans 1-1.
Oh.
Check into that episode for 2 hours of us asleep, snoring with no dialogue. And then a special surprise at the end that we did not predict.
There will be an unannounced surprise guest for the last 30 minutes of the episode that is fun. It's a good guest.
Yeah.
Someone who's never been on the show before.
Yeah. Who
Daniel Ocean.
Yes.
Himself?
Yes. He stole the podcast. Tune in next week for Old Boy. With Allison Wilmore, our friend Allison Wilmore, returned to the show from New York Magazine.
Honk, honk.
Honk, honk.
I don't know.
And as always...
Are you guys doing an Ocean's 8 commentary?
Yep.
Oh, is that the first time you've done a commentary on a movie that Griffin is ostensibly in?
My arm is in it. My arm is
I guess the answer is yes, right?
Yeah.
You guys are going across the Griffinverse.
Yeah, and I'm warning people in advance, we're going to pause for 30 minutes when my arm is on screen and really dissect like every inch of the frame. Anyway, and as always, this podcast is blank Becker now. It's a Becker podcast. It's a Becker rewatch podcast.